Hey everyone, Josh Perry here. If you've been watching or listening to the Gray Matters podcast for any amount of episodes, you know I don't normally do guest intros. But after recording with Shawn Wells, an amazing human being, a good friend of mine, we realized that if you're listening to this, the book's already out, but he's got a new book that just launched this week, and we didn't really talk about it till towards the end. This was one of the longer running podcast episodes, and you'll see why. There's just so much value and substance and context and gray area of life that we talked about. But Shawn Wells' new book, The Energy Formula, is available now. You can check it out anywhere you get books, and whatever form you read or listen to books, it's out there, and it's called The Energy Formula. It's an amazing take on Shawn's perspective on health and human optimization and love and community and energy, and we talk a little bit about all of those things, actually a lot more than a little bit on today's episode. And I just really hope you guys enjoy this episode titled My Broken is My Beautiful, starring Shawn Wells. Mitch and I are in there as guests or hosts, to Shawn being our guest, and just really hope you guys enjoy this. So much value to take away from this episode. I encourage you to check out Shawn's website, Shawn's social media, and there's just, in his book, of course, he's just such a wealth of knowledge and a loving human being, very kind person, been very supportive and like a mentor to me and a good friend, and yeah, I'm excited to share this episode. So without further ado, let's hop into it. There he is.
Hello.
What's up, Shawn?
What's up, bruh?
Good morning. You're out on the West Coast, right?
I am in Hollywood, Los Angeles. Let me know which one sounds better. How does this sound?
The other way sounded actually better. This sounds a little distorted. Cool. Yeah, the other way was crispy.
Am I coming in clear now, guys?
Crispy.
Yep.
Word.
Coming in clear. Coming in hot.
Now we don't have to worry about messing up your beautiful hair. Yeah, there it is. So yeah, you said you're in Hollywood. You're out doing the recording of your book, the audio form, right?
Right.
I think that's really cool that the author is doing the audio recording of their own book.
That's a must.
That's good. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
There's that face.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to do the book.
Yeah, how's that process been?
And, exhausting, overwhelming, expensive, and like even when you think you're done, you get frustrated and feel like it's not done, especially when it's not just like a self-help book where it's like you have some thoughts, they hold up for years. It's like the more like you're kind of in the science realm, the more like new shit comes out, and like you want to just keep adding it and talking about it, and then the more I evolve in my plant medicine journeys and stuff, you know, it's just I just keep wanting to change it, add to it, like, you know, it's hard.
Yeah, I can definitely understand. When I was writing my book, which I finished the rough draft recently, it was like everything I was writing as I was evolving internally and externally as a human being, I was like, oh man, I need to add this, I need to change that, well this thought's changed, and it was never ending, and I had to get to a place where it was like, just let go, it's written, you can always write another one or another one. So yeah, I definitely understand, because especially in the science world.
Yeah, I had a massive rewrite that I did do, and I actually had recorded the book, and I went back and rewrote quite a bit, and then re-recorded it. So I know what that's like, but I'm ready for it to be out into the world and move on to the next thing. And then maybe I'll at some point do an expanded version or something like that, a version 2. We'll see. But
awesome. Well, we're definitely going to dive more into the book, because I think that's it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is, one, you're a good friend of mine. You're someone that I've looked up to as a positive model for me to model after in my life in various different ways. You've been there for me. You've shared experience. You've shared advice. I've personally resonated with your story on so many levels, inside and out. And I think I've talked to you about that over the years, just like being on a plane, listening to you tell your story, and me like just tearing up, crying, because I'm like, that's me, man. Like we come from the same place, moved to North Carolina, same, like it's just so many things. Yeah. And then my buddy Mitch here, I've introduced your work and your story to him, and he's just a big fan of Ben Greenfield, biohacking, and just overcoming adversity. So I thought it'd be appropriate to have you on. I know we've been trying to do this for some time now, and we got it organized on my end to make it happen. And just really thrilled to dive into who Shawn Wells was, who Shawn Wells is today, and all the things you're doing to serve other people. So yeah, without further ado, I just want to kick this off with a huge thank you for taking the time on this Super Bowl Sunday to chat with us, to share your wisdom, to share your love, and yeah, let's just dive in if that's cool.
Let's do it. I'm excited too, man. I love you big time as well, Josh. You know that. So let's do this thing.
Awesome. Well, the first thing I wanted to dive into was just, we're in 2021, we're just in the second month, and there's so many different takes on this last year of 2020 with the pandemic, civil rights, like emotional traumas everywhere. Like it's easy to see all these things up and down. And in my perspective, there's two types of people that have come out of 2020, and there's those that find excuses and those that find, empowerment. And I'm just curious, what is the biggest positive or the biggest win or the biggest piece of value you've personally taken out of 2020 that you've applied in your life moving forward today?
Greatest year of my life, without a doubt. I'm so thankful for 2020. I was planning on working and traveling about 300 days in 2020. I was going frantic and full speed, achievement driven. And, I can say that I love myself a lot more now, and I can look back at that achievement driven Shawn that was trying to achieve to earn love. And I can say I'm thankful for who that person was, because it helped me get to where I am. The achievements helped me to establish success, establish my credentials, have a passionate work ethic, took me all over the world. But I was still working at a pace that was frantic. I was still stuck in sympathetic nervous system. I was still overactivating my immune system and my autoimmune issues. And I was not feeling loved. I had a lot of self-loathing. I was biohacking to survive. A lot of the stuff I know is the biohacking, the keto, the supplements, the exercise hacks, all those things are like how I could compensate and survive, not thrive, because it wasn't built on a solid foundation. And that 300 days of traveling, it was growing exponentially because I was so overwhelmed. If there was even a free spot anywhere, one, I had FOMO and needed to just be wherever I could be so that I could achieve. I don't want to miss out on a single achievement, because that thing could be the next thing that propels me forward to the next level, whatever the next level is. I kept chasing the next level, even though I'd gone about 20 levels up, and I should be happy where I'm at to some degree. But you're never happy. And when you're working that many days, I mean, literally 18-hour days, 365 days a year, and traveling 300 days, anything that could be put in my schedule, I just said, if it's open, put it in. I didn't have a filter. I didn't have boundaries. I was just pushing, hoping something falls into place. And it's just like, like I hear some ladies talk about they're searching for the dream man, like a savior to come in, and where do I find this dream guy? It's very much the same mentality I had with, I was searching for the savior in the work mind, like that something's going to fall into place. Someone's going to see me, and then I become a celebrity and wealthy and all these things. And you're the answer. You're the one. You are the one. Stop looking for the one. You're the one. Heal the one. Be the one. Have that self-love for you. Heal yourself. Be passionate. Be lit up. Create boundaries. Boundaries is an excellent form of expressing self-love. Have the right people around you. Like, who are your 5 around you? What does that look like? Are they building you up, lifting you up? Or are they zombies that don't give you anything back? Are they energy vampires that are stealing your energy from you? Who are you putting around you? And so I got to, because of the pandemic, everything stopped without me having to have a heart attack, without me having to have some major trauma. Everything stopped. And it's the greatest blessing of my life that I got to take a step back. I started doing plant medicine journeys regularly. I stopped looking for the savior. I stopped looking for the next big thing. I stopped looking for more and more achievements and leveling up, and started thinking about loving myself, and that love is actually free. If I want to give it, I will get it back, but it needs to start with me. You project what's inside you. And if you think there's jerks all around you, here's news to use. Take a look in the mirror. Take a look in the mirror. And if you know, with me, you know, also, like, I realize now I have so many amazing people around me that now I realize that that's me projecting, and I'm fucking amazing.
Hell yeah, I love that.
I stopped having the imposter syndrome, and I reframed that. I'm like, fuck the imposter syndrome. I'm not like some joke that isn't supposed to be here with all these amazing people. I'm looking around at amazing people, and then I realize I manifested that, and I'm fucking amazing.
Amen.
Yes, sir. That's one of the many reasons why I love you, and it's so perfect with Mitch and I and you being here in this moment and sharing these perspectives, because that was similar for me. And I'll let Mitch share his perspective on 2020, but for me it was the same thing. Like, I just recently learned by working with a functional medicine doctor that Mitch introduced me to that I had off the chart high levels of EBV. And I know that's something that you've been working through. And I've just another thing that I'm like, all right, here's someone that's doing something, that's overcome something that I'm like all these things. And for me, yeah, just not being on a plane every other weekend and not being stressed and not having to do this and really doing a lot of interchange work and understanding all these things I was chasing was just to hide an insecurity that wasn't good enough, that I wasn't able to do the things I wanted for whatever reason. I needed more external things to validate what my truest intention was, that my baggage was weighing me down and not allowing me to believe. And so, Mitch, why don't you share your takeaway from 2020? Because it sounds like, just knowing you, all three of us have had the same, like, slow down to go like 3 or 20 steps forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And yeah, Shawn, nice to meet you, and thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. Yeah, 2020 for me has absolutely been about, slowing down to kind of rebuild. I've got a history of, a lot of the same health issues that Shawn and Josh and I share, the traumatic brain injury stories, and a lot of the things that have helped both of us is kind of how we connected. And this year got hit with a couple of curveballs that really had to slow down, like had to stop working out. Like Shawn had the adrenal fatigue kind of stuff going on. Found out that I had Hashimoto's, found out that I had hypothyroid with a big reverse T3 issue. So have been really learning about the thyroid and about hormones, and along those lines, the things that really helped me were exactly what we're talking about: the change work, the mindset, the going into these deep meditations, and getting clear with the shadow and what I want to be and who I am now, and really facing a lot of the demons that I didn't face early on in my journey. When I had Lyme and mold and heavy metal toxicity, and even though I'd healed from those things, the big lesson for me with this year was I hadn't healed my emotions. I hadn't healed my thoughts. And so we know, like, from biology belief, Bruce Lipton, that the three things that affect human biology are thoughts, toxins, and traumas. And I had healed from the traumas, I had healed from the toxins, but the thoughts were still there. And the progress that I've made, both with Josh and personally, and together, we've made a lot of progress this year. It's the mindset. And when I'm working with clients, that's what we go to first, and that's what's been so important in my life and in theirs as well. So I just love what we're chatting about here, and I love sharing that with clients.
Yeah, and on that note, Shawn, I was telling Mitch about your KetoCon 2019 talk, because of all the podcasts I've heard of you and all the things I've heard you talk about this and that, the KetoCon 2019 talk that you, the biggest takeaway for me was your phrase of "broken is beautiful," and it's just a reframe. It's just a perspective. Like, we can see ourselves as broken or damaged and whatever, or we can see ourselves as that being information, and we can utilize that to figure out where we need to go forward. And the way you started that talk was unlike any other podcast or anything like that. And that's what I wanted to talk about today mostly, was just like this identity, I'd say, crisis that you were on, this journey of figuring out who Shawn Wells was, because I don't want to talk about your venture to North Carolina, the timeline story that just changed your whole life, but it sounds like all three of us have been on this similar journey in our own respected routes of trying to see who we truly are, besides or beyond the facade of who we identify as, and compare and contrast with the external world, what people think we should be, and this and that. And I know I've talked to you a little bit about my, stepping away from BMX, which was like my childhood dream, and I identified everything about me in that. And it took 3 years for me to be where I am today, like fully accept. I haven't touched my bike in a year, which is pretty interesting for me. But to really figure out who I am, and that BMX was just an extension of who I am. I call it my Josh Niss. Just add in Niss to anyone's name. It's like that was an extension of who I am. And I know you talked about so many different things. So leading up to the KetoCon talk, where you seemed to me like you finally stepped into your truth. You owned who you were beyond the accolades, beyond the achievements, beyond the patents and the formulator and all these things. You stepped into your truth and spoke that, and you could easily feel it and see it and hear it. So I want to talk about, you leaving, because you're originally from Massachusetts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have that parallel. Then you went to North Carolina, same thing as me. But there was a really big pivotal moment in your, I'd say, your education and career / passion trajectory that someone really important to you, I'd say, now influenced all that. So let's start there. Can we talk about that, like that timeline, that story, and like what that did for you inside and out?
Yeah. I grew up a junk food junkie, a pretty chaotic childhood, and I was hiding in the video games and the junk food, and emotionally in pain. My two brothers had ran away at early ages, and um, that kind of dysfunctional family situation, and getting bullied at school a lot for being obese, and then having a large rear end was something that, I mean, really hurt. And I ended up becoming like the class clown, as a way to kind of deflect all that pain. I became very good at doing that. But I got into Babson College, it's the #1 business specialty school in the country, in Wellesley, Massachusetts. And everyone had told me, just do business, go make money, that kind of thing. And so it was about halfway through that I needed a physical, and I went to my doctor, and I was like already starting, like just starting to work out using creatine and protein that had just, creatine had just come out as well. And I was getting really good results. And for someone that's always been the fat kid, I was starting to transform my body. And it's literally addictive at the beginning when you're going up like a dumbbell set every week, and like, you're like, wow, like, and I started getting some attention, and people telling me, wow, like, you're looking pretty good, Shawn. And so I told my doctor about my passion of supplements and working out, and how much it's transforming me. And instead of telling me it's stupid, like a lot of doctors might say with supplements, instead of just saying, huh, that's interesting, he saw my passion. He saw me, literally saw me, the vulnerable, true side of me, and saw what was lighting me up. And he went out of his way beyond the scope of what's needed from him, but between us. And he wrote out this lifeline between 20 and 80. And he showed it to me and said, why not be happy between here and here? And that was like such a game changer, that this super respected, accomplished man, this medical doctor, like went out of his way to give me the freedom and license to go pursue my dream. And it wasn't like some, hippie going, hey bro, go chase your dreams, bro. It was like, this is like a real accomplished guy saying like, do what makes you happy and you will be a successful person. And I had already had this idea in my mind of like, formulating ingredients and stacking ingredients. I'm like, why doesn't the supplement have this, this, and this? That really pisses me off. These are the three best ingredients. Why does it have these? And like, I had this idea in my head of like being a formulator someday, and maybe even being the best one at it. And it seemed like a crazy pipe dream because I don't even know how many formulators there are. It seems more realistic to be a rock star or supermodel or actor or something like that. So, but the crazy thing is, like, I am here and I've been called the world's greatest formulator. And it's just insane to think about the power of this man's words, that I would not be where I am had it not been for him talking to me.
Wow.
And I think about it all the time. Like, those are pivotal moments. And, you know, did he know that day, like those words would like radically change my life path, create, and then think about all the people that I've connected with and touched and helped. And it's just such a profound thing. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, I ended up finishing up my degree at BabSN, and then deciding to go get all these classes I needed to get into eventually my dream school of UNC Chapel Hill to do nutritional biochemistry and exercise science. And so I went to UNC Greensboro. My parents had moved from Massachusetts down to North Carolina, and I was going to get all my classes there. And so I went into this guidance counselor and I told him about my dream of being a formulator, about going to Chapel Hill, and I needed about 26 credit hours a semester of all these sciences with labs. And he said that I'm a business student and I will not only fail, I will fail miserably. And he said that I'm not even in that good a shape. And I left his office, and I almost committed suicide that night because for 2 years I was very focused on this dream that, this man had told me was possible and I believed was possible for several years. And it was all I thought about. And I was working at GNCs and I was formulating things in my head and I was helping people. And then here I was, like, right at the doorstep of my dream. And this guy felt like he took it away from me. And I almost killed myself. And so, again, like, I mean, I don't think people appreciate the power of their words and how much it can, like, those words literally made me. And then, maybe this guy that almost took my life in a way, like, kind of made me too, because I ended up not taking my life. It ended up strengthening my resolve. I thought of that guy every single day. I was like, fuck that guy. I'm going to prove him wrong. I was fueled by anger for 2 straight years. I literally thought about that man's face and voice every single day. And people would be like, hey, you want to go out and get a drink? You want to go party? You want to do this? I'm like, no, I'm going to study. I'm going to study. I'm going to study. And I got straight A's through a very difficult 2 years of classes, got into Chapel Hill. But man, like, that's the power of words for sure. And then later on at Chapel Hill, I ended up getting very sick because I was pushing so hard. I ended up getting Epstein-Barr, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, Hashimoto's, and I couldn't get out of bed for about 6 months. Like, I was just in pain and inflamed, and again thought about killing myself because I thought, again, what's the point of all this work if I can't live as a human and I'm just going to be stuck in bed? And that's when I stumbled into ketogenic dieting. Was about 20 years ago, and that changed my life. I was able to get out of bed, like, have like a lot less pain and inflammation. And then again, I ended up getting my dream job at Dymatize as a formulator, director of R&D, after I'd done about 10 years clinically as a chief clinical dietitian. And I was pushing again. I was working 80 hours a week. This, Dymatize wanted to go to sale, in 3 years. So like everyone there was like pushing, pushing, pushing. And I was part of it. I'd get in at 7 a.m., I'd leave at 11 p.m. And I wasn't eating that well. I wasn't doing all the things I know how to do. I got to, pituitary adenoma. And, it's just, I've had like all these checks and balances along the way that have really helped me recenter. And, using the word reframing, I've been frustrated all my health issues. I had 2 discs removed in my neck from a bad car accident. I've had several surgeries, but I've pushed my body in all kinds of ways, even though I know all the things to do. Like I was saying, I was so driven for achievement. I probably spent the last 20 plus years working over 80 hours a week. And in a way that, like, while I love what I do, I wasn't granting myself enough grace. I wasn't allowing myself to be imperfect where my broken was my beautiful. That was that was a massive shift when I brought that story out, Josh. Like, that was like me saying I am not perfect at all. Up until that point, when you're a professional, when you're an executive, when you're a dietitian, when you're a sports nutritionist, when you're published in studies and, online and speaking on stages and doing all these things, I thought I needed to be perfect, fit, smart, happy, perfect. Everything's going great. Look at me, follow me. I've got it all figured out. Meanwhile, I was battling suicidal thoughts, clinically depressed, exhausted. The more I traveled, the more my autoimmune stuff flared up. I was, going up and down in my weight as my depression, came on and off. I've always had body dysmorphia issues because, like I said, I was morbidly obese. Then I went to anorexic. I went from like 300 pounds to about 150 pounds. Then I went to 220 pounds, like, lean and ripped. But then I was orthorexic. Like, there was never a point where I was just happy with who I was, on the inside or out. And so to just share that my broken is my beautiful, like, this is what makes me unique and different. The obstacle is the way. That all this pain and all this difficulty and adversity that I've been through is what connects me to everyone, is what makes me so passionate and driven, is what helps with that empathy. And it's part of my hero's journey that I'm now proud of. Like, that was a massive shift to say, I'm no longer suppressing this and hiding it away. I'm actually showing it to you, and I'm fucking proud of it. Like, this is who I am. This is what makes me incredible. And I don't think someone that hasn't been through adversity is really worth knowing or is worth listening to. And so I became proud of it. And that became my story. And to share it, and I wasn't even sure when I shared it, because I'm like, is this sciencey enough? Like, are they going to even because half of my presentation was more of a story. And yes, I got into autoimmune supplements and keto and how that works in keto supplements and, mitochondrial health and all this stuff. But half of it was just a story. And it ended up connecting on a much deeper, better level than anything I've ever done. People came up to me crying, saying like they've been suicidal too, they've been depressed too, they've had autoimmune issues too, they've had brain tumors too, they've had people be abusive to them too, they've had their dreams taken away as well, whatever. And to have that and have it connect, it was like this side of me that has been suppressed for so long and I felt ashamed of, like that discordance of like who you're putting out there versus like who you really are. That was leading to like a lot of my depression and suicidal thoughts. Was the person I was putting out there wasn't what was really going on the inside. And now to come to terms with that, now be proud of that, huge difference.
100%. And I mean, I'm so happy for you and happy for myself and just other people that got to hear and can still view that talk. I think it's on YouTube for free. Because like I said, I thought in that moment, I was thinking, because I'm on my own journey, we all are. But again, I look up to you as someone to model in my life in terms of like looking at excellence and to see someone on stage sharing their truth, being vulnerable, and to just be stepping into their power was so amazing for me. And I could just understand exactly what you're saying, because that's the same journey I've been on. I've been speaking about, I think April will be 3 years now. And one, to see the progression, that's amazing. But two, to see how my words have shifted, how my focus and my passions have shifted. Because like you said, the talk was majority. And I watched it again this morning just to get it refreshed in my memory. And the majority of it was you talking about your story inside and out, that will lead you to who you are and can give context to the things you're talking about, why it's important. And I've realized in my own speaking, Mitch and I have talked about it quite a bit as well with him speaking now and getting on podcasts. Like the nutrition, the exercise, the supplements, that's all amazing. Those are all amazing tools. But what allows us to make the change is to be able to relate to someone else that's going through something that we maybe are experiencing now or have been trying to overcome, and knowing it's possible, and to see people genuinely sharing their truths and who they are, and not using this catalog of Instagram or any kind of social media as our best moments, that people are like, oh man, like he's that guy, that woman, whatever, they got it, like they're killing it. Like, I can't do that. Like, they can't relate to me. But when you start speaking, like you've been sharing your story more and more about these personal things, people are going to understand what they can do in their lives, and they can take away their own takeaways from your story and your ups and downs and your successes and your challenges. And speaking of all that, going back to what you were saying about, you have these two different pivotal people in your life. One for you, for Shawn Wells, for the dream, inspiring, positive, loving. And another person, I would argue, was just hurt and projecting their own insecurities and fears onto you. But the power of words, on top of your unconscious mind taking the negative words and unconsciously agreeing, because that's what you see in your environment, that's what you see in the mirror. But I'm curious, what was it about you and what was drawing you towards doing what you believed you needed to do to have the outcome you wanted, to create the life you wanted, versus this person telling you can't, and here's all the evidence, which you can already see, of why you can't? Like, what about you inside allowed you to push forward all of that and essentially beat all of the odds to be where you are today, owning who you are today?
Yeah, I think I've spent, it's interesting in the plant medicine space, there's these Peruvian Andean analogies that are made with the puma energy is about being in a state where you were driven and charging forward. It's a very masculine energy. We're in a world that's driven by ultra masculine energy with I do versus I am, or a state of being. I think the world is about to shift more in the direction of being and I am. Like, we need more of that healing feminine energy and at least some balance. I think the world's been like kind of out of control with an ultra masculine energy for a long time. But then there's the snake energy, which is a state of transformation, a state of groundedness, shedding the skin, or, moving through the ground in a way that's less masculine. And again, it's transformational. It's kind of in the middle. And then there's a condor energy that's kind of seeing the world from a higher vantage point, where you're less pulled into the details. And it's a like larger scale perspective. I mean, just think of the condor flying very high. They fly incredibly high, actually. And I think there's, most of my life I've spent not only puma energy, but what they call wounded puma. I think most entrepreneurs have been traumatized, and they're very driven, trying to prove, show, achieve. And it's often related to traumas that have not been dealt with, that have been suppressed. And I was very competitive, from always being picked last on sports teams, from never getting the girl all through high school, from being laughed at, in gym class because I had fat thighs, or, whatever. I mean, there's only so much of that stuff you can take, and it does build a degree of resilience and competitiveness. Of like, screw everyone, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. And I'm not saying it's the healthiest thing, like the healthiest state to be in, but it definitely can create success, as you see with almost every entrepreneur out there. And I'm in so many masterminds where I've been around numerous billionaires that don't have it figured out, that are hurting, that are super accomplished financially. But when you listen to them, their marriages are wrecked, their relationships are wrecked. They were molested, they were abused as a child. I would say probably 40% of the entrepreneur men that I've talked to have been molested. That's something you never hear. Never ever. Men are supposed to like suppress all that stuff. Like, that's what we're taught. Like, men don't cry, men tough it out, all that stuff. So I was really good at not crying and toughing it out, with occasional periods of wanting to kill myself and severe depression. So I'd say like that's what like drove me. That's what created all the achievement and success. And again, it's not something that like I look back on and regret. Like I wouldn't, it's, just like that doctor not talking to me and I wouldn't be here. The guidance counselor talking to me is also a reason that I'm here. And also all my drive and pain is a reason I'm here. And so I don't regret any of it. It's about evolution. Like, what am I going to do with it now? That's cool. All of that served me. And I'm proud of all of that because it's all part of my hero's journey. I'm so proud of it. Like, from the broken is my beautiful thing. Like, yeah, I'm really proud of it. Okay, what do I do now? And that's what I'm looking at is what I do now. And that's where I've been moving into, therapy, mentors, masterminds, plant medicine, and really taken 2020 and now 2021 to focus on myself. And I poured a lot of that into my book. A lot of my book has the science, but about half of it is like stories and connecting and mindset and reframing and all that kind of stuff that I've learned along the way too. Because even when it comes to keto, it doesn't matter if I can tell you keto all day long, if you're not compliant, if you don't see your purpose in it, if you don't think of it as a lifestyle instead of a diet, then it's going to be very impermanent, and it's going to be for the wrong reasons. And maybe it's because you hate your body that you're doing it. And like, you need to like heal and have a solid foundation of self-love before like any other transformations are really possible. If you want like that best life, it doesn't come through that miraculous guy like walking through the doorway. It doesn't come through like Ferraris. It doesn't come through that incredible 6-figure or 7-figure job. It doesn't come from Instagram or YouTube fame. It doesn't come from any of that. If you want to be happy, you can literally choose it right now. Can you be happy? You can choose to be happy right now. The inner, like I've learned to do the inner work, but I don't even like that term, like work, because that's something that's triggers me, because I've spent a lot of my life working, and it shouldn't be hard. I came into this world very beautiful, very innocent, very loving, and I've built up all these constructs around that, my ego protecting me. And now it's just a matter of doing this plant medicine, doing the therapy, doing these things to clear that away and get back to the inner child. For me, every time I set an intention going into plant medicine, it's about play, learning how to play, learning how to be creative, learning how to have fun, how to love myself again, how to grant myself grace. Those are the things I'm trying to do, not do like deep inner work. Like it's got to be, guttural, visceral, painful, sacrificing work. That's more of my old story. I'm beyond that now. No, like now it's going to be fun. I'm getting back to the best me. I want to be creative. I want to laugh. I want to play. And if I'm my best self, I realize that I can manifest all kinds of things. And people might think that idea is super woo, but I'll put it to you this way. When you're heads up, when you're thriving and you're not heads down and grinding, you're in the right place, right time, all the time. all the time. There's amazing stuff around you all the time. You're just never seeing it. You're never hearing it. You're never aware of it. There's that guy right next to you in Starbucks that could change your life. But your head's down. You're too busy. You're in the right place, right time. And you're waiting for the right place, right time by grinding, by being distracted. And the grinding and the distractions not going to bring it.
I love that. I love that so much. And it just goes back to what you said earlier, like we are the answer. It's so synergistic that you said that today, because yesterday I posted an article saying you are the answer, and I wrote a Instagram post the day before about that's where it came from. It actually comes from a friend of mine who's a hip hop artist that had a line in one of his songs saying, "I was trying to study for the tests until I found out that I was the answer," and that's where that came from for me. And then to see you share that today, it's just amazing. And it's just another one of the reasons why I believe we connected on the path that we did, because we're all doing this life thing together. And I think the thing that comes to mind for me and all that you're talking about, even going back to imposter syndrome and what you were just talking about now being the answer, it's like, because there's this phrase that was shared with me, like what you focus on expands. So yeah, if you're focusing on the grind, you're focusing on the hustle, the work, your negativity, why you don't have this, why you don't have that, why you're alone, why you're sad, why you're unhealthy, you're just going to see more of that. That's the unconscious mind at work. But even if you're going through the shit, which all three of us have our own stories about being at the lowest points of our lives that many people can relate to, many people maybe not, but we still had the intention of focusing on what we wanted to be true about our lives, and then we saw opportunity. And so all that leads back to, you Mitch and I all share the same journey. I'd argue most people do. A lot of the fuel to get to where we are today was fueled by anger and spite, but then there came a point where we realized that served us for only so long, and then it started tearing us down. It became catabolic at some point. And then we chose, maybe unconsciously in the moment that we're conscious of now, we're aware of now, love, gratitude, perspective, contribution, all of these things are what success means to us. Health, happiness, all of these things. So I'm curious, is like, what like specific point, if there is one that comes to mind, where you decided to no longer use the anger and spite, but go all in on love, on gratitude, on contribution, on just who you are today? Because back to my original talking point about your talk at KetoCon, to me that was like, oh, like, because I know that wasn't an easy process for you. I remember talking to you day before that, like at KetoCon, like you were just changing things, you weren't sure, but then it just was like that moment was like, oh, there's Shawn, he's owning it now. So like, at what point did you decide to leave this behind, anger, spite, I'm going to prove people wrong, like this and that, and go all in on like who you truly believe you are?
That was it. I think I think you're right now that I look back. Um, that was a turning point, and it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. Like you said, I was in my room changing it and then scared, like, do I say this? Like, am I really going to show myself like this? I mean, what I've learned in plant medicine is the word intimacy to me means being truly vulnerable and seeing someone vulnerable and being seen in like a real way, fully you. And when you're in that space, like there's people that I've known for a weekend on this, plant medicine journey or ceremony, whatever you want to call it, that I feel closer to than friends and family I've had for 40 years.
Why do you think that
And,
is,
and
Shawn?
it's because of being seen and then seeing them. People are talking about their traumas. People are saying that I'm a transsexual, like at heart, or you know, I've been a lesbian, I've been hiding it, or I've been molested, or I've been abused, or that I'm in a failed marriage, and whatever it is, like when you hear like people like really bare their soul, and you see them for who they truly are, and just vulnerable and raw, that's like when you share that with someone, and it's really important that a safe container is created by whoever's the facilitators. Huge important thing. They call it like, the most important thing is set and setting. And it's the mindset going into it. If you're resistant, you can lean out of any of these plant medicines and they'll have basically no effect unless someone just crazy overdoses you and like overpowers you,
Mm-hmm.
which is not very good to do. But like you can lean out of any of these things. The point is like is you go in with intentions, you go in with an open mind and heart, and then that setting is safe and you feel like you can lean in. You're not going to be judged. And these facilitators will help you and guide you and listen to you and love you. And that's so important. And I think, you know, before I started doing plant medicine, which was New Year's last year, right before the pandemic, it was, I think you're right, Josh. Like that was when things started to shift for me, when I was like, I'm just going to start sharing my story, whether people want it or not. You know, I'm going to see what's going to happen. If I lose everyone on Instagram, if I lose my keto following or whatever, like I don't care. I don't care. Like I just got to this point where I'm like, it just feels fake and I'm tired of it.
Shawn,
And
you are speaking to my soul right now, brother. I just got to ask, you know, as you're, you know, learning all these things about yourself, what was the big, like, what allowed you to see that and to make that change?
yeah, I think it was
Like, what,
me.
what would be a first step for someone, you think?
I think it was the desire to be vulnerable again and to be seen. I was tired of being an inauthentic self,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's just, you know, people talk about keeping it real all the time. Like, what are you keeping real? Like, who, like, if you haven't like done the inner work, or I don't know a better word yet, but inner play or whatever I want to call it, if you haven't healed yourself, if you haven't looked at yourself deeply in the mirror, then how do you know what you're like, what's truly serving you or not? And quite frankly, if you haven't been through adversity, how do you know what's truly serving you or not? Like you don't really find yourself until you've been through adversity. So that's where again the obstacle is the way. It's not just something that we wish didn't happen or we wish like that there's a shortcut for. It's like we start to enjoy the challenges, the adversity, because it's what creates us. It's where we find ourselves, where we can figure out what does light us up, where our strengths truly are, how to rely on people around us. I mean, if you don't have that adversity, none of that's happening. I wouldn't be world's greatest, whether you want to call me that or not, like anything, or really good at what I do at least, unless I've been through all the adversity. And so now you know, I just hit a point where one, I was proud of it. And two, I'm like, I'm tired of being inauthentic. And I want to share this. And I know, like I felt in my heart, like I might lose a lot of people, whether that was true or not. And it turned out to not be true. But I was like, even if I do, I think I'll be happier with the people that stick around. And that's where I was. And then I took a trip a little after that to Iceland to do like a biohacking trip with Kayla and Nick that does the paleo chef, and I think you know BioCurious Kayla, Josh, and like we did a really cool trip with a bunch of biohackers, and just being out in Iceland away from, I did zero social media, zero computer anything for 2 weeks. In my life, that has never ever happened. I've worked through every single vacation in Fiji and Maui and all these cool places, like tropical places all over the world that, like, for business reasons I had been to. I worked through every single hour of all of them. This was the first time, like, and I was in this magical place of Iceland where it's just, we were jumping in these icy, pristine lakes. And, you know, we were seeing these, or we were going in hot springs too, like these sulfur hot springs. And it just looks like an alien world. And there's no EMFs. And it was just amazing to connect with like really kind, loving people and have zero electronics, zero devices. And that kind of reset me too. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then I started thinking about, I'm going to start putting more of myself out there and trying some other things. And then Keith Norris was a good friend who had always put me on at Paleo FX and had me featured as a speaker there, who was just, I love this guy. Just loved his energy, loved that he loved me. I felt like I saw a lot of myself in him, but like he was like 1 or 2 steps ahead, which is really important in your journey, to have someone that like you see as yourself, maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead. And Keith really has been that person for me. He just reminds me of me, but he's just a little bit more evolved. He's done a little bit more of the work. He has a little bit more experience. So like it gives me someone to model. And he told me about a plant medicine experience with a bunch of cool people, entrepreneurs, and I went to it. And this was at New Year's last year, and I didn't know anyone except Keith. There's about 20 people. Didn't tell anyone my story, who I was, all my accomplishments. I just went in, and soon in, like I had a cuddle puddle experience, like where I'm laying on the floor, like cuddling with 5 other people, and I realized while I was in this space, like they love me. They love me because of the energy I'm putting out, because I'm being loving. They don't know who I am. They're not next to me because of my accomplishments, financial, career-wise, anything. They're not next to me because they find me attractive or not. They're next to me because they think I have a good soul and I'm a loving human being. And that was like a massive, massive heart shift. You can tell someone that all day long, but until you feel it, it's not real. And for me, when I felt that in my heart, and I thought, I don't need to achieve to earn love. And even with all the achievements, I never get the love that I think I'm going to get. I have to just keep going for more achievements. And I was like, wait a second, I can just stop and be here and live in the moment and get love by giving love. And that was so huge for me. And then another epiphany I had was that my life isn't on rails. If I want to shift, if I want to go some completely different direction, I can do it. I can do anything I want today. I can walk out that door and be someone entirely different. Just because you've done XYZ for like the last how many decades, you don't have to continue on that path, no matter what it is, whether it's career, whether it's, your sexuality, whether it's in a relationship, or whatever it is, or that place that you live. You can go live somewhere else, be someone else, do something else. You can go create right now, whatever it is you want to do or be. And you can experiment. It doesn't have to be the finished product. That's another thing I've learned too, is like, it's never perfect. I'm always putting out a B plus. And that's fine. Because like, while you're, wondering whether your A is good enough, you're never putting out your A. You're always just putting out an F as you're sitting there waiting on the sidelines. I'm creating every day, putting out like a string of B pluses, and I'm outdoing everyone. So it's good. Like, and that's what I'm happy about. And each day I see like how I could have gotten better, and I add that and I put out something else. And I keep learning. I keep experimenting. That's what success is. It's 2 things. It's experimenting and it's reframing. And it's showing up.
Yep.
It's showing up.
Well, I love that. I have like a bunch of notes over here. I'm drawing lines, connecting ideas, because my brain's just moving a million miles an hour right now. And it's one of the reasons why I thought this was going to be so much fun, just because I kind of have an understanding of how you think, the journey you've been through, the similarities, even with Mitch, like all 3 of us. And something that keeps coming up, and I was trying to put it off till the biohacking section of this, was plant medicine. And I want to get to that in a second, because I believe that has been a really profound experience in my life these last few years of stripping away the facade that is my ego, like who I think I am, who the world perceives me as. So I want to go there, probably a little bit sooner than I intended on. But I want to back up to the points you're talking about. To me, you're talking about adversity is really important. And we see all these models. Well, I like to call them virtual mentors, and that's for so long you were a virtual mentor to me until we could meet in person, and then now you become a friend, and here we are. And I have many virtual mentors throughout my life, some of which, like as you know, Dave Muir was a big hero of mine. I had posters on my wall growing up, and then became friends with him and got to hang out with him. And I think that that's really important because when we can see people that we can model, we can also learn their stories. We can learn the adversity they've gone through. They can learn the challenges and see like that's why they've become who they've become. It's not always just one or the other. You know, in your case, you had a very pivotal person telling you, yes, do that, you got this. And then someone saying not to do that. You won't succeed. You're going to fail. Like who, but you use them to go towards the vision in your mind that you were working towards. You created that vision, you manifested it and some. And with all that being said, like what comes to mind for me is something I've been saying for a little while is I've realized that in my own journey is that our authenticity is our superpower. Because when we can own who we are, we can step into that. All these other things that are less important or not important just vanish. And then we see who we are for real and what's important to us, what motivates us, what triggers us, and that's all reframed from the past. And then you add in a reframe of adversity that you've gone through and you understand every single person listening, including us right here, we've all been through the most challenging aspects of our lives. All the biggest struggle, we've overcome all of them to be right here. That's a fact. We're not going to know what's going to happen in the future, but everything we've overcome it successfully to be here today. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? And with that, we can drop the imposter syndrome because we're owning who we are. And I know I went through that, like I've shared with you before, like leaving BMX, I was like, who am I? Everyone thinks I'm this successful BMX athlete. I don't feel like that anymore because that's not really what drives me now. And I'm not like successful in this avenue yet. You know, I'm fresh. And so I dealt with a lot of like, who am I to be doing this? Like, who am I to be helping people with their health or to be helping them grow their business or to be just motivating people? Like, I don't feel that way now. But when I started to own, I've been through some shit. I've overcome it. I have had successes. I have value. Every human being has value. It just depends on the perspective that you're choosing, and that is highly, highly influenced from your environment. You mentioned at the beginning of this who you surround yourself with. You know, what type of energy do they have? What type of thought process do they have? Behavior, habits, like all these things. All of that comes in and informs who we are, and that's going to dictate how we see adversity. And something that is always streamlined across anyone that's successful, depending on how you define it, doesn't matter. They always see an obstacle. You mentioned Ryan Holiday, Obstacle is the Way. It's a great book. They always see an obstacle, and over time this becomes easier. They reframe it to, what can I learn from this? What is this trying to teach me right now? And, you know, Mitch, Shawn, myself, like we've been through some of the hardest things that a human being can experience, whether ourselves or people that we care about. And that has led us to who we are today. And where I want to go with this now is, we've talked about plant medicine. I think you've mentioned it like 10 times. I know Mitch has been itching to get to this, even if he doesn't say he is. I know, because the first time we met, a friend of ours who's a chiropractor introduced us because Mitch was going to see her. She found out that he was a health coach, got this TBI story, all this stuff. Like, you got to talk with Josh. The first day we met, we talked and walked around, shoes off in the grass for like 2 hours. Psychedelics came up. Like it was natural. It came up. And then right then and there, we were just like stepbrothers. Like, oh, did we just establish we're best friends? Like, and here we are today. And so I want Mitch to share a little bit about his experience overall with psychedelics and plant medicine. But the one thing I want to share from my end, it's just been an amazing tool because the thing you talked about control and how you can take yourself out, I've experienced that the first couple times. And I was just like, oh, like this is weird, taking myself out. And there was still some weirdness going on with perception and reality, but I wasn't in it like I was before I decided to freak myself out. I've learned what you've said, and I've kind of accepted and kind of embraced myself into it, leaned in, which is an interesting thing with like MMA fighters. They'll say when you pull away from like an arm bar or something, you get yourself trapped. But you got to roll into fear to get yourself out of the challenge. So it's a really interesting dynamic with psychedelics and fears in general. But yeah, Mitch, why don't you share, because you have a lot more experience in terms of duration of time than I do. I'm about a year or two into my psychedelic, plant medicine journey. But Mitch, what has been like something for you in this realm of facade of identity and who we are and authenticity that you've taken value from plant medicine?
Well, plant medicine has always been, the great teacher for me, the great healer. I always feel like I get amazing downloads, and I haven't always done it in the smartest way. I mean, for years I was using psychedelics to escape my reality, where I thought I was doing that, but really what I was doing is I was healing. Josh, more than the TBIs, we have both of our brothers committed suicide, and that was a really hard thing. And my brother and my cousin and I lived together, and we would go on these hiking trips, or me and my cousin would go after he had passed, and just to kind of defrag, just to kind of get away. And we would eat these handfuls of mushrooms and dance around the fire all night long, and cry and weep and laugh and really, really heal. And now that I've grown as I've grown, and plant medicine has still been more of a therapeutic part, I understand that I was changing then. I remember in particular, I had debilitating anxiety, early on after the TBI. And I remember going to a big concert, Widespread Panic, New Year's Eve, and eating a big handful of mushrooms. And I was having a blast. I was right up front. I mean, New Year's, Widespread Panic, I mean, that's a lot of energy, man. And I'm sitting right up front. The mushrooms hit me, and they're coming in way too hard. They start playing an acoustic set, and I can't even tune in. Like, it sounds like noise, and all the anxiety that I was experiencing at that time, that I was trying to escape, it flooded into my brain. It scared the shit out of me. And I remember thinking, like, God, I can't do this right now. I can't do 3 or 4 hours right up front. But a funny thing happened is, and now looking back, I know that I decided to change. I decided to shift my state. I decided to move past that. I felt that anxiety coming in, and I just said, I'm not accepting that. I'm going to move my body. I'm going to shift. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to enjoy this moment. And before you knew it, I was looking at the people around me. I was getting scared, and all of a sudden I embraced everybody. I embraced the crowd. I feel connected to everyone and everything. And I had the best fucking night of my life. And I realized at that point, I got to quit working in this corporate world. So mushrooms, psychedelics, have always been the great teacher for me in so many ways. And as I grow, I continue to grow with them. And, it's really interesting that Josh and I got to meet and got to share that with him. I mean, I think when we first started trying to get Josh on some plant medicine, he was always telling me, like, speaking of leaning in, it's like he wouldn't lean in. He would never. I don't feel anything. I don't get anything. I think my brain's not working. Like all these discussions that we had, and it's really just letting go, and getting the download that you need, and taking that for whatever healing that you need at that moment. So I mean, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. For me, psychedelics have always been, healing. The information that I need to hear right now, I always come out of it with something that was profound, and I can take into the future. And I think it's so important to do that integration work as well, to have these profound experiences, and to just to have a profound experience every time. Like that's just part of it. You've got to do the work. You've got to integrate. You've got to use those new tools. So yeah, I mean, we can continue to talk about that, but that's kind of my take.
Yeah, I it was this past summer. It was the 2-year mark that my brother had passed, and I didn't realize the day when I decided to consume an eighth worth of mushrooms. And little did I know that I was going to have a beautiful moment on the balcony here with my girlfriend. And the learning I had in that moment of like back and forth, like in, out, leaning in, like fearful, and I just like embraced it. Because 2 weeks leading to that, my coach I'm still working with, she was saying, hold this intention when your meditations until that day, hold this intention of how can you honor your brother? Because I just felt like this weird gap of what was going on in my life. I couldn't figure out how to make sense of that. And so leading up to that moment, I was like, fuck, Josh, you are way too wound up. You are way too controlling. And it just hit me. And I just big smile. And I was like, my brother was the complete opposite. He was the rowdy, like just did not give a fuck about what anyone thought of him. He spoke his mind. He let me know he was loving. But he had his own, obviously his own challenges. And in that moment, I was like, man, how can I honor my brother? I can just be less me. I can just be less like my old self. And so it's just been an amazing tool because Mitch and I were just talking the other day. When you start to understand yourself, like really understand yourself, that develops this level of empathy that transcends to other people. And then rather than saying that person that cut me off is an asshole, that person that said this is an asshole, just have curiosity. And for me, it's always, I wonder what that person's going through. I wonder what that person's been. I talk about hurt people, like that saying, like it's so true because deep down at their core, I don't think anyone truly wants to hurt another human. I think they always had the best intention for themselves to feel some kind of release from the pain they're in. And I think that that's a powerful thing the three of us have learned through our journey. It's not about what happens to you. It's about what you utilize that information moving forward. And the three of us going all in on that, sharing these things, look at how many people we've helped rather than when I was, just chasing BMX. Like, I probably wasn't affecting that many people like the level I am now. Mitch, when you were in corporate, and Shawn, when you were just working on this supplement and that, like try to be the best version of you, like that's a part of it. But now it's about other people and like that connectedness. So that's been one of the profound things that have come for me for plant medicine, the interchange, movement instead of work. We can say movement or evolution. And that actually reminds me of the quote I shared with you yesterday, Mitch. I heard someone say, "You have to get involved to evolve."
Yeah,
So you have to get involved with your life to really evolve. So many of us are so scared to do that for whatever reason. Discomfort usually is up there, fear. So yeah, that was just like a nice little little circle around about plant medicine and how I think we're starting to see that conversation show up more and more in a respected manner, and how beautiful of a tool it is. But also that doesn't dismiss things like float tanks, meditation, journaling. Like all of those tools are so important. It's not just one or the other, and that I don't know where to go now because, like I said, I wanted to say the biohacking to the end, but just plant medicine seems so relevant and it kept coming up that it just made sense. But I do want to, unless you have something else you want to share, Shawn, on
Yeah,
this
yeah,
topic.
yeah, I do. One of the things that I think I've discovered is that I believe that these plant medicines, people talk about that there's power in the plants and the plants are teaching you, or that, it's connecting to source or God or whatever. And all those things may be true, but for me, how I'm framing it is you're connecting to higher self, like truest self. You're actually moving through the ego constructs and getting to see what actually resonates with you or what you've been struggling and you've been suppressing.
Mm-hmm.
And to get that clarity, to get more authentic, to work through things that have been sitting there underneath the surface and festering for a long time, causing you mental health and physical health issues,
Mm-hmm.
that can be so transformative. And the energy when you align with yourself is such a weight off mentally and physically. That can just be so massive. And that's where it's an incredible tool. And yes, Mitch, to your point, like, I've been working with really great facilitators that where you do set the intention, where they do guide you on the journey, where they do understand your physiology and your traumas, and they do dose you appropriately, and they do work with you on leaning in and leaning out and what that looks like. And then they do work with you on integration that day, after, for the coming days, for the coming weeks and months, on helping you apply this to your daily life so that your life does change, and that it's not just escapism. Although, to your point, Mitch, and I think that's a great point, that there's times, again, granting ourselves grace, that escapism is okay. Is it the best way to move through something? No. I mean, dealing with it would be better directly. I mean, obviously, but do we need to escape sometimes? I mean, why do we go to the movies? Why do we, go to a concert? Why do we go to a restaurant? Why do we, hang out with friends? Like, I mean, sometimes, like, we just, or jump in a car and go fast, it's like we're escaping. Like, and sometimes it's not just like I'm just running from my problems and that makes me a coward. No, like it's like we need that time. We need that time so we can process and reframe.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think so much like of reframing is us reframing the reframe. We've actually taken something that's true and then turned it into something negative. We've reframed it into like a horror story. We've reframed it into the inner critic and imposter syndrome and all of this negative shit. And then we're trying to reframe it back, if we're good at it, to something positive. And that's cool. But when we get to be in this plant medicine space, it's above all the reframing, whether negative or positive, and you just get to truth. And that's like the most powerful, when you get to see the clarity and the truth for you. And then that's that enlightenment that can serve in a way that, you know, when we're constantly in our real world with the ego, we're just wrestling back and forth and to get away from all that and reduce the noise and just have inner peace and clarity, and then figure out, okay, what do I do with this now that I see this clearly, I feel this clearly in my heart, what do I do now? That's where it's an incredible tool. And I feel like that can be massively transformative for so many people. And I look forward to people pursuing this, but hopefully in a way like I have done. I leave it in that space with facilitators that know me, that have a medical background and a psychological therapeutic background. And I work with them, I leave it in that space. I have a soul fam that comes into that space that I trust. And just energetically, I think that's the best thing for me versus just me just doing it on my own or doing it in groups or partying or, you know, whatever. I kind of leave it in that space, and that way I'm not tempted to abuse it or use it in the wrong way or be ripped open and then be almost traumatized from being ripped open and not knowing what to do with it or how to apply it. So I think that's an important clause to add to that is you really need the right facilitators and people that understand you, that have done this with a lot of experience, can provide a safe, loving, judgment-free setting. I think all of that's important.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, setting, like you do any surface level education and research into psychedelics, like they say, set and setting, and it's not just solely your environment. It's like what's up here, and your environment affects what's up here. And so that's so true. And also, you know, you talked about truth, and going back to you are the answer, your highest intention, your pure self, whatever you want to call it, being connected to God, to spirit, to source, to energy, to the universe, whatever, quantum, whatever, it's your truest intention. And we often lose our truest intention, our truth, who we are, because of the emotional baggage that we take on as we get older and older, and it just influences us in the wrong way. To your point, you have to reframe all of your shit back towards your truth, and then to figure out, all right, this is what life means to me. This is what's important to me. This is what I want to do. And this is all one tool. The mind is a tool. Psychedelics are a tool. And to who I believe you are stepping into now, in terms of, I don't necessarily see you as like the world's greatest formulator anymore. I think that was a past version of you, because now it's all these things. I'm connecting all these dots of everything I've listened to you, everything I've talked to you about, learned from you. It all comes back to energy, whether it's spiritual energy or physical energy in the body. You know, we could talk about ATP, but your book is about energy. You are about energy, the energy we share, like all of these things. And I think this is a nice segue into the second piece I wanted to talk about nutrition, because we've now acknowledged that nutrition, whether it's keto, supplements, fat, like these are all just tools, but they're very important tools, because the physical body can get run down to a degree where it starts affecting your spiritual body and your mental body and your emotional body. And so I think this is perfect segue into nutrition. And one of my favorite things I heard, like I've adopted so many things from you. like I was telling Mitch after I heard you speak, it was a couple years ago now, about keto being or mito being the new keto in a couple years. Like I firmly believe that now because I understand, and you put me onto that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it was an episode of Kyle Kingsbury podcast that you and Ryan were on, where you were talking about this concept of, are you optimizing or are you adapting? Neither one is right or wrong. They're appropriate in the right time. But that's where I see nutrition coming in, back to where you said it was in your college years where you just started getting run down, you got sick with this and that, and it led you on this path because you were in fitness, you were in supplements, and then you started getting really in tune with nutritional eating. You found keto and all that. So let's talk about this concept of optimize over adapt. And can you just break that down? Because that was something that just resonated so much with me at the time. And I think it was a really important concept to share with other people.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I think we're hearing a lot in biohacking about optimization. Uh, Honestly, I've struggled a little bit because of my wounded puma kind of thing that I was telling you about with the word biohacking. I understand obviously what it means, but I had this epiphany in plant medicine also about this idea of trying to take the shortcut, almost like I was saying, like, how you don't want to wish the obstacle wasn't there, but you also don't necessarily wish there was a shortcut around it.
Well,
And I feel like a lot of my life has been spent in the sacrificial grind of years and years and years, and you have to gut it out and it's slow. And then I'll go back to, I need to just quickly cut this out, fix it, whatever quick way I can. I'll gut it out that way too. It's going to hurt, but I'll just tear that band-aid off. That's biohacking, the shortcut. I feel like optimization with plant medicine and emotionality and connection is about that lifestyle and about being happy in the here and now and living in the present, and not wishing for the shortcut, and also not being so heads down that you're missing it all. It's about living in the here and now. And that's what I've been trying to do. And I think that's where optimization is. I still use the word biohacking because it connects, but there's an element to that word that the kind of like inner work that triggers me a little bit. And that's my projection that I'm bringing to the table. You always have to preface that. So it's just a thought with that. But optimization, I think, is it's got to be built on the foundation of self-love and inner truth, whatever that is for you. That's not something for anyone else to project on you. It's where you have peace, zen. Flow state should be the state that you're seeking. Flow state is like your true projection of your gifts, of your love, of yourself, and in your highest state. That's flow state. When it's like you don't even remember exactly how it's happening, but just genius is pouring out of you. Whether it's Michael Jordan, like he doesn't even know how he just made the last 10 shots in a row, and he doesn't hear the crowd, or it's whoever, like a composer, it's just coming out of them. Like they didn't, sometimes they talk about they didn't even feel their hand or know that their hand was moving up and down. Like there's a term for it. I think it was called like ghost hand or, something like that. But essentially it's like you're in that flow state and it's taking over. It's like you're possessed by your true self. Like the ego is just dead for the moment. And you're fully shining in your truest expression of self. And that should be the state that we're seeking. And too often we're pushing in the sympathetic nervous system state where it's okay, again, to be Puma sometimes, to be fight or flight sometimes, to hustle sometimes, obviously. But ultra masculine, wounded Puma, or ultra sympathetic, grind. What does grind mean? Grind means pieces breaking down and heat, smoke, things breaking off. That's grinding. And that's what happened to my body. Grinding means heads down. And you're not seeing that right place, right time. You're not connecting with those amazing people. You're not receiving that energy. You're never in that flow state. You're always looking for that next level, that next thing, for happiness that will never come. So Gary Vee is a fucking asshole. I'll tell you that right now. He's the great deceiver, and people are watching their lives pass them by under this lie. So I think, I mean, taking that back another step, like I'm sure he's done a lot of positive things, but that does frustrate me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah, or grinding. But I guess, how do I tie that back to nutrition? Is that the question?
No, I mean we were just talking about optimize and adapt, and it was a beautiful answer. It was perfect. It was everything that was meant to come out. And on the note of the grind, the hustle, the Gary Vee mentality, that's why I've been sharing nonstop with Mitch and everyone else. Like I came across a gentleman named Kerwin Ray a couple of years ago, and virtual mentor, became in-person friends. It was fucking amazing how that happened. But he, to me, takes the Gary Vee and Tony Robbins and combines it, because he's a serial entrepreneur, very successful, teaches social media marketing, but also teaches consciousness, also teaches about plant medicine, also teaches about health and fitness and your mind, your body, and everything. Because if you want to have a sustainable business, you want to be a sustainable entrepreneur, you have to have a vessel that's going to take in information, process it right, and it's going to be there to have the energy to move forward. And so I definitely understand what you're saying. It'd be really interesting to talk with Gary Vee about all of that too. Sorry, there's just a wild pack of dogs running through my neighborhood, apparently. But where I wanted to go with this, specifically into the micro of nutrition, talking about optimization versus adaptation, is, like I said, you're the one that got me like super passionate about mitochondria. So much that through a meditation, I figured out how to combine this mitochondrial perspective and these other, having a deep intention in your life. And my online course is called the Mito course. It's massive intention to optimize. That came through a meditation. And then on our recent trip, Mitch and I, to our NLP practitioner training, I came up with another acronym of Mito. And I think it was making or manifesting intentions through optimization. And I was just like, all right, cool. But the point is, mitochondria is everything, because as you've said and shared, it's all about energy. And I don't want to get too deep onto this podcast, because I know you can take us as deep as we want to go. And I know Mitch's brain is getting really excited right now. But that could be for a later episode if that's something you'd be interested in. But for right now, in your KetoCon talk, when you start getting into the nitty gritty on a surface level of nutrition, you spoke about mitochondria being the most important piece to focus on and how we can optimize it through basic lifestyle choices. You went into supplements, which we can talk about today. But there's this concept about dis-ease creating disease. And we know mitochondrial damage, dysfunction, however you want to word it, not being optimal is not creating optimal levels of energy, which for those listening, they've probably heard us talk about this. It's not calories, it's ATP. Quality of calories is going to create different levels of ATP, all that stuff. So it's about mitochondrial performance. And so when you were speaking about that, that's why I said, I was like, yes, that's it. It's not about keto. And now I'm like, it's not even about mitochondria. Mitochondria influence mentally and emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So can you go in and talk about the different things? And I mean, in my notes, I was taking all these notes about insufficient cellular energy, brain energy gap, glycation, metabolic syndrome, like all these things, and how they're tied to mitochondria, but how that can affect not only our physical body, our emotional body, our mental body, and our spiritual body, basically our true self.
Mm. Oh, wow.
And I know that's a loaded question. So wherever you want to go is perfect.
Well, first off, I'm a sci-fi nerd, and if anyone else out there is too, it might help to actually think of in Star Wars they talk about midi-chlorians, and it's a very similar concept. Like this midi-chlorian count, like determines like how great of a Jedi you are and like how powerful you can be. And I really feel like the mitochondria like are your true vitality, your true source of energy in life. And cellular energy at a higher level equals life energy and vitality. So the mitochondria, you might remember as like the cellular powerhouse, the little factory in the cell. And, in biology, you might think that there's one of them and that's about the story and they just make a cell run. It's so much more than that, so much more important than that. In energy intensive cells, you have up to 5,000 mitochondria in a cell. Brown adipose tissue, for example, is brown because of so many mitochondria. But the heart, the brain, they're energy intensive, and they have tons of mitochondria. And so that's where you see brain energy gap. That's where you see cardiac problems, is because there's an insufficient cellular energy scenario, and that's called ICE, and that's getting explored more and more. And in the brain, they call it brain energy gap, as you alluded to. But it's the same idea where you don't have enough energy and there's a shortfall of that energy. And what happens is that there is dysfunction. And not only is there a shortfall of energy, but then because these cells can't operate correctly and they're functioning suboptimally, you're getting into scenarios of glycation, which is blood sugar damage, oxidation, inflammation chronically. All those things are okay acutely. It's okay to have acute inflammation, like for healing. It's okay to have oxidation as a signal, and like reduction oxidation is something that happens all the time. Methylation, there can be that can be a good thing, but methylation errors like to DNA is not. So like some of these things, they're all fine acutely, but when we're in this energetic shortfall chronically, and then you're getting all this damage chronically, and then you're biologically aging faster than your chronological age, and you're in a scenario where you have a greater likelihood towards almost all disease states. That's where it's problematic, and that's where the mitochondria are so important. And so doing things to reduce oxidation, inflammation, glycation, and methylation errors is helpful. And also doing things to strengthen the mitochondria directly is helpful, whether just by strengthening one, how they function, or two, increasing the number of them through mitochondrial biogenesis. And there's things like that the idea that we talked about before with the obstacles the way is the mental approach to the idea physiologically of hormesis. It's the same idea that adversity creates that adaptation, increases the strength. And if you didn't have the adversity, the body would grow weak, just like the brain, by not having that stoic obstacles the way mindset, that reframing mindset. So when you're dealing with this hormetic stress, you can help the cells, you can help the body adapt and grow stronger. And more specifically, there's an idea of hormesis with mitochondria called mitohormesis. That's more specific to mitochondria. It's the same idea. And if you see probably the most powerful compounds that exist are the polyphenol family for our health. We've heard about red wine, we've heard about olive oil, we've heard about all these things like coffee and green tea and blueberries and these power foods that are attached to blue zones and Mediterranean living and all that kind of stuff with longer life and longevity. So what's interesting is these compounds are all xenohormetics, where they've been through difficulty and adversity on their own. And their difficulty and adversity is something that can translate to us, and we have a more powerful effect from. And so you see things like blueberries that have pterostilbene, red wine that has transresveratrol, EGCG from green tea, chlorogenic acid from coffee, quercetin from onions and red apples. You're seeing all these compounds have powerful effects on our health. And they actually are caloric restriction mimetics. Caloric restriction is a hormetic effect, just like cold plunges and saunas and all these different ideas of things that increase our resilience, increase our what's called our allostatic load. We have a stress bucket essentially, and the stress bucket, if it overflows, then we can get sick, and that's when you see like HRV like get suppressed and all that kind of stuff. But through hormesis, we can actually grow that bucket. We can increase our allostatic load. So that's the idea that like, your mitochondria and your body itself can be more resilient by challenging it in the right way. But again, like any of these things, if you're already overstressed, you can't stack in fasting. You can't stack in, jumping in the cold lake. You can't like add in any of these other things because it could be too much. And of course, some of these physiologic stressors, it depends on how you're framing them mentally. That's a factor too. So that, obviously it can play both ways. So those are all just things to think about, is just your resiliency makes you harder to kill. That's the idea. Like you are a being that can take greater adversity physiologically and mentally. And one affects the other. When you have a greater capacity for physiologic stress, you have a greater capacity for mental stress. When you have a greater capacity for mental stress, you can take more physiologic stress. So one affects the other. It's just, it's very important. I don't think most people are making these connections that we're talking about, but I think that that's where science is moving.
Well, here on the Gray Matters podcast, that's what we do. We talk about the context, the gray area. And I love that you mentioned the stress part, because we think of stress usually mentally, stress with the work or responsibilities of the family or finances, all these things. But the conversation we're having right now, I don't want people to think nutrition is the only thing that could damage your mitochondria. Like you mentioned, like stress too. So that's where the mental and emotional pieces come in, doing the mental and emotional release work to get rid of the baggage, to get rid of that, and reframing your life instead of saying, I have to go to work. Fuck, you get to go to work, especially right now. How many people are losing their jobs or not able to put food on the table? Like, you have to? No, you get to. And that's what Mitch and I talk a lot about, just like the life we live, like how like we don't often spend enough time thinking about like, oh wow, this is awesome. I get to be alive. I get to experience things, ups and downs. And so, you mentioned a lot of different stressors like cold plunges, fasting, even keto can help mitochondrial biogenesis. There was something too that you mentioned in KetoCon about mitophagy. So for those that are listening about that are passionate about fasting, and we hear autophagy and all those things, can you explain the concept around autophagy and mitophagy and how those are important, but also maybe just some ways that we can target these different elements and these processes that allow our mitochondria to adapt and become stronger, therefore we can become stronger?
Yeah, and I love tying things back to like what we talked about mentally, and because they're all connected. Sympathetic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system, you have the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system states. Sympathetic is fight, flight, or freeze. Parasympathetic is rest and digest, and most people already know that. The idea is that we're often in probably too much of the time we're in that sympathetic nervous system state, and so we're rarely getting into the rest and digest state, or even better, what's called after we eat, like the post-absorptive state is a similar idea, right? Where we're healing, we're cleaning up, we're maybe like if computers, like defragging, right? That's kind of the idea, like where we're optimizing. Our body's trying to optimize, get rid of the toxins, get rid of the errors, like in methylation DNA errors, get rid of toxins, like have time to clean out and defrag. If you're pushing, going, I want more, you can do that acutely sometimes when you have to, as a matter of survival. We all have to. We all have to, outrun the saber-toothed tiger, whatever that is in our life. But to do that chronically is going to lead to issues. You're not allowing your body to heal and recover. There's a term I like in exercise physiology that instead of overtraining, using the word under recovering, right? So, and looking at HRV is one of the tools that can be very helpful to understanding that heart rate variability. Autophagy is that cellular detox. It's like a little vacuum cleaner coming in and cleaning out your cell. And it's one of the reasons they're actually looking at rapamycin, because that's a muscle, it's a protein synthesis inhibitor, not just muscle protein synthesis, but protein synthesis inhibitor. And so protein synthesis is an anabolic state. It's a building state. Like catabolism is that state we also need, where there's cleanup happening, where there's detox happening. And so autophagy is that critical detox where it can be potently anti-aging, it can be potently anti-inflammatory, potently healing, and we're not allowing our bodies to do that. And then mitophagy, again, is kind of an extrapolation of that, specifically around the mitochondria. And again, mitochondria are just so critical at producing energy. So keeping those functioning optimally, allowing them to create as much adenosine triphosphate energy, the currency for energy in our body, that's so necessary. So we need to mentally allow for the parasympathetic state by doing journaling, affirmations, resting, playing music, like, connecting with friends and prayer, and all these things that we're typically not doing. And that allows for us to get into that state. And we do get some autophagy, by the way, from exercise. We do get some autophagy clearly by fasting and some of these things. But we're just not allowing our body to do that typically. So it's just an important thing to focus on, I think, as far as that healing, detox, cleaning up, and being able to certainly extend lifespan and health span, which is even more important about quality of life.
Yeah, no doubt. And I love all that. And also what comes to mind from your talk at KetoCon, where just like, it just took me from being passionate about keto to, passionate about mitochondria. And you had a slide that just, to me, was just like, oh, that makes so much sense, because we also can get some autophagy benefits from following a ketogenic diet, being that metabolic state of ketosis and changing your food. That contributes to mitochondrial health and performance. But the reason you said keto, as in ketosis, can be so beneficial for this, and that, and we're seeing this, magic pill, so to speak, happening, is because mitochondria. And I wanted to know if you could just kind of just dive in a little bit in terms of like how keto and mitochondria are so intertwined, and how mitochondria makes keto so beautiful for so many different things that people call it a magic pill, or it must be too good to be true. But there's a deeper why to that.
Why keto? Say that again. So why
keto and mitochondria are so linked together on such a profound level?
Yeah. So keto is a shortcut or biohack, if you will, of fasting, essentially, or starving, because your body is not getting the glucose it needs to fuel the cells in the way it's typically meant to. Ketones are an alternate fuel source, and those usually come up when you're fasted or starving. But this diet is kind of a hack. There are some cultures that have eaten this way, but it's very atypical, I would say, like to eat a true ketogenic diet. Now you can get ketones, a variety of ways that I can get into in a second, but it's definitely a hack. But what does happen is a lot of us in modern culture are insulin resistant, glucose intolerant. and we have metabolic dysfunction to varying degrees because we're eating all the time. We're far from fasting. We're eating throughout the day, 3-6 times a day, whatever it is, with snacks and all the things, and food is like omnipresent. We're eating high glycemic carbohydrates. It's nothing like the carbohydrates that were high fiber that we used to eat. We're always eating carbohydrates. We don't go through periods of like winter like we might have before, where we ate animals like, protein and fat. The carbohydrates are very different even when it comes to the starches, because there were resistant starches. And now those are made ripe, heated up, whatever, to where it's, again, high glycemic starches that don't feed the gut and just increase blood sugar. We're not exercising like we used to, especially similar to high intensity interval training, like short bursts or spurts of survival. And then, again, like we might be looking for food for days, which is, fasting/starving. So all those things like would have put us in a very different place where we wouldn't have been eating the ketogenic diet. Again, I feel like that's a hack for like kind of simulating fasting, but we would have been in ketosis a lot. And for all those reasons I listed, maybe at least half the time we would have been in a fair amount of ketosis. So we would have been metabolically flexible, of which we are not anymore. We're just highly glucose dependent. And the highly glucose dependent and insulin resistant means that we are not good at making ketones, and also means that we're probably in an insufficient cellular energy state a lot. And that's where people that are metabolically dysfunctional, that have mitochondrial dysfunction, when they get on keto, they're like, oh my God, I have so much energy. This is amazing. The more metabolically dysfunctional you are, the more it's going to feel like someone just turned the lights on.
That was my experience exactly.
and specifically with brain trauma like yours, a traumatic brain injury looks like Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes, where you're insulin resistant in those cells. And a traumatic brain injury is essentially insulin resistant and can't make the energy it needs. Therefore, fueling it with ketones can help the healing. But going back to even the idea of fasting, again, that's going to be healthy for the mitochondria. That's going to allow them to work in a way that they can go through autophagy, they can repair. And then having ketones for fuel is going to allow for those mitochondria to have the energy they need, the fuel substrate they need to produce ATP.
So for those listening, I want to make sure I have this right, and I want to ask you this. Is it because when our cells become resistant to glucose or insulin and glucose, we know with brain injuries, there's a similar degree of that in the brain. Is it because ketones use a different highway, if you will, from the bloodstream to the cells? Glucose uses the GLUT transporters, but ketones uses monocarboxylate transport acids or something like that, like MCT transporters? Is that why ketosis, not necessarily keto, but ketosis, the state of having ketones in your bloodstream, can get into the cell to fuel the mitochondria, is because the pathways are different?
Yeah, and that would be largely a big reason. And then again, like I said, when you're not insulin resistant and you're producing enough energy, then you're not creating scenarios of glycation, inflammation, oxidation, methylation errors, all those kinds of scenarios that has the whole body running suboptimally, that you're now fighting the fight and you're putting energy against the fight. Instead, you're not fighting the fight anymore, and you're allowing for healing to take place through autophagy, and you have that unique transport system that you're talking about.
And that's also why I would assume it's very important to not have excess body fat just because you're overweight, you don't look as well, but because we know excess body fat that doesn't get metabolized, it almost gets like rancid and puts off free radicals and inflammatory cytokines, things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Those things can be trapped in the adipose tissue for sure.
Yeah.
So physical health is more than just looks and performance. It's actually longevity and quality of health in life.
One thing I would be careful to do that I've learned though is, it's very easy in biohacking, like it is in life, to hate your body. One reframe I would offer is that how miraculous is the idea of body fat, that you can have this ultimate form of stored energy on you to survive, that it's calorically dense with 9 calories per gram, that it can cushion you if you fall, that it's a dynamic tissue that talks to your muscle and your bone. And it does store toxins in it, and it stores vitamins in it, and it protects you all the time. I mean, that's something like, I just, in a world of six packs and all that kind of stuff, like, we can ease up on ourselves too, and like realize how incredible and miraculous the body is.
I love that you said that, because I see that being a very challenging obstacle for people to overcome with themselves and with other people. And for me, my journey led me to keto wasn't about my physical form. I'm much happier now with how I look because of certain things that we understand about, burning fat for fuel, being metabolically flexible, mental, emotional traumas being released, things like that. But what got me into this keto lifestyle was the brain health, performance aspects, and longevity, because of my background of multiple TBIs, brain tumors, and emotional trauma, things like that. So it's such a good point that you just made, because so many people, look out and see all of these perfect health figures, if you will, and people promoting that, and people using the social media catalog to showcase all of that. And that's honestly what almost killed me. I'm not sure if you know this part about my story, but before the brain tumor was diagnosed when I was 21, it took a year and a half of me complaining of headaches, migraines, and asking for an image of my skull to see if there was something wrong. And they kept looking at me, judging me by my cover, and sending me home with endless amounts of pain pills. As we know, pain pill deficiencies aren't really a thing for human beings, but it took hitting my head training one day to get the MRI to be required, and that's when they found it. So there's different spectrums of body image that plays a role in how we see ourselves and see the world and what's important. And so I love that you brought that up, because that's a heavy topic, and I see people on both spectrums promoting like, love your body, you're healthy, don't listen to anyone that says, maybe clean some things up because your body's perfect. And then I see people like, no, that's the worst information ever because they're destroying themselves. That's not really true self-love. Like, and it's like, no, there's some gray area, there's some middle ground. It's just about perspective and what's important to you. And many people, I'd argue, that want to be healthy, so to speak, they're not doing the things they want to do or they think they should, because they're afraid. They're afraid of how they're going to be judged. They're afraid of the science and the complications. They're afraid of losing that protection. Mitch and I just had a profound experience in person watching a woman who had two parts of her. Part of her wanted to get healthy. She wanted to be able to find a relationship that would find, or a partner that would find her attractive and share a life. And part of her didn't want to lose the protection because she was molested as a child. And she thought, now she had this unconscious belief that, not being seen as attractive would keep her safe. Lo and behold, she's suffering every day because she's not with someone that she wants to be with. She's not happy about herself, but there's this part of her. And so you bringing that up is so profound on so many levels.
That happens a lot, that we manifest things subconsciously as a way to protect ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people that are overweight, like I was, that's a means of not being seen, so that you can walk through a room and people just look past you. They don't see you as attractive. It hurts when we think about it. It hurts, but it's also a coping mechanism of, I'm going to put on weight physiologically to protect myself so I'm not seen. And then, at times when you're called out or you're made fun of, and, those things hurt because you don't want to be seen. And it's amazing how, like, when you see that it's not just an equation of calories in, calories out, or what's your diet, or, how much are you exercising? A lot of times when you heal this trauma, you instantly lose the weight. I've seen people lose 10, 15 pounds in days, in a few days of healing a trauma, because their body was holding on to it for dear life. You train your body to do all these things. There's psychosomatic anchoring that happens. You know NLP. Like, you're training your body to do all these things. you're hardwiring these things over time. That's called crystallized intelligence. When you hardwire, like you get dumber, quote unquote, as you age in some ways with fluid or dynamic intelligence, like the ability to learn new tasks. But we get smarter as we age with crystallized intelligence, with kind of like the faster and faster and faster shortcuts. And that can serve us well in a number of ways. Obviously, we're getting faster and faster at the same task, but it can also create challenges when we want to learn the new task or rewire that old task. And so we're creating these patterns, these constructs that serve us in the moment, but that's where things like reframing or plant medicine or therapy or some of these things are going to help like rewire so that you can refire. And that's going to be really important is like, and it's the idea of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, like BDNF, being the protein that's associated with that neuroplasticity. So that would be like your ability to learn new tasks, to make new memories, to form new neurons, to create new connections where you haven't before. You connect, like whenever like you're like, oh my God, I never thought of it that, like you're literally creating a new neuronal pathway. Like that aha moment, like there's literally a wire that's happening right then. You're like, boom, that's now a new part of your brain. So that's really cool to think about that idea of neuroplasticity and reframing and being able to adjust physiologically and mentally.
Yeah, no doubt. I love that you said that. That's been Mitch and I's hot topic this last year or two. Like getting introduced to Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, 2015, and then getting into the world of NLP. Like we know unconscious, like learning is unconscious. It's an unconscious behavior. You're born with instructions that you didn't have to learn, like unearned wisdom, if you will, which is also a common term with psychedelics, is unearned wisdom. But you don't think to create new cells, to develop and to pump blood in your heart and for your brain to function. Like you already know how to do that. And then as we go on, we learn things at an unconscious level. It takes to be aware of what you don't like about your life to consciously create new habits, which is habits you mentioned is efficiency. Our brains are designed to look for the path of least resistance, but also to make things as efficient as we can. And to your point, that can harm us or it can help us. The awareness is the difference. Are you aware? Are you aware of what you want? Are you aware of what you don't want? Are you aware of where you are today? And for me and Mitch as well, and I would argue for you, when you make any nutritional changes, then you start seeing what feeling well is like, what feeling good and healthy is like. But for so long, you just get slowly accustomed to feeling like garbage that you make a change and one day you feel so much better. And so I love that you said that. And the quote, neurons that fire together, wire together, but you can unwire and refire them in different ways. And Dr. Joe uses MRIs to show like synapses and thoughts and memories occurring in real time. And it's really profound. And I think it just takes that awareness for some people. I know for me, it was that seeing the science, seeing the evidence, so to speak, for me to develop that belief. Because I was kind of, I don't want to say brainwashed, but I was led this lie of like cause and effect. I need to see something to do something or to feel something. And we know we can do it the opposite. We can cause an effect in our lives by changing our state. And when you change your state, information can come in. Otherwise, it's just blocked off. And so with all that, I want to talk about, we've been talking about keto and mitochondria. And you also talked about a ketogenic diet, which is something that I think is very misunderstood. This term metabolic flexibility, I mean, Rachel, Metflex and Chill, she's gone all in on that. And I love that. That's like my favorite thing about nutrition now is metabolic flexibility and how we can optimize our life to achieve that. But when I first got into keto, it was thanks to Dr. Perlmutter's book, Grain Brain, 2013. I just went all in on keto is the way. I was in a fear state. Ironically, I was afraid of the tumors coming back. They did again and again. But I got locked in this like polarized, dogmatic, it's got to be keto or it's not. Mitch and I, we had a lot of resistance at the beginning because I was like, bro, I don't agree with anything besides keto. And then I started to understand mitochondria thanks to you. And I started understanding these processes and why I didn't need to eat just god-awful amounts of fat and optimize my protein at probably too low for what my body needed at the time and why I was feeling tired and sore all the time. So Can you explain on like whatever level you want to, a ketogenic diet, how that differs from someone getting into ketosis through exercise, fasting, or just eating higher amounts of protein as long as insulin is low, and then just metabolic flexibility in general of what that really means for the listeners?
Sure. So, and first off, if you are going to do the ketogenic diet, I would recommend that you do it very strictly in the macros I'm going to lay out in just a second for, say, 90 days, so that those MCT transporters that you're talking about are optimized and upregulated, that you get more efficient at turning fat into ketones, utilization, etc. So that's really important, that you also give your body some time to realize what ketosis feels like. I feel like how it feels is actually more important than even blood readings of BHB on a glucometer, because again, as you adapt, instead of those ketones just hanging around in the plasma, they're going to be utilized. So that's a difference. So, maybe you don't see like a 2 or 3 anymore, and you see like a 0.8, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you feel good, it's because they're being used, and that's that feeling good. So I think it's important. And before you get into net carbs and all that kind of crap, and cyclical and targeted ketogenic dieting and all these things, you really should take a period of time to feel to feel what true ketosis feels like. So I think that's important for your body to know what that is, and the adaptations epigenetically to take place. So a true ketogenic diet is like about 75 to 80% of your calories coming from fat, about 20% or so coming from protein. You keep protein fairly modest because of gluconeogenesis, potentially, where you have too much protein, it can be turned into glucose. And then carbohydrates are kept very low at 0 to 5%, and you want to keep them fairly low glycemic as well. So things like fibers and resistant starches and things like that, vegetables. So the difference between that and, well, let's say, I think low carb, by the way, that can get confusing. Low carb can be anywhere from 0 to 50% of your calories coming from carbohydrate, which is very confusing. And when people say low carb, that can mean just about anything. And low carb isn't necessarily ketogenic, which is confusing, because you're having potentially a lot of carbs, or you're having a lot of protein. Some bodybuilders eat the clean diet of super low fat, super low carb, which means like 80+% is coming from protein, which is getting converted to glucose. So, a lot of these low carb diets can still be glucogenic, essentially, not necessarily ketogenic. That's where the big difference is. You have to be high fat, very low carb on a ketogenic diet to produce ketones. There has to be a lack of glucose available for your body to go into a ketogenic mode, producing ketones for you to be in a state of ketosis. Other ways to get into ketosis besides the ketogenic diet would be fasting. You're already fasting every night for 8 hours. You're not eating typically. And that's where intermittent fasting can help, if you're maybe pairing up some extra hours of that non-feeding window, time restricted feeding, around your sleep that you're already fasting. Add on top of that, it's actually healthy for you in terms of your circadian rhythm and Dr. Satchipanda's data to not eat during a nighttime window. The sleep-wake cycle, you should only be eating during the daylight window, because we're not nighttime creatures, if you will. We're certainly not adapted for that, and it can disrupt our circadian rhythm. So other things that can help is like high intensity exercise that's glycogen depleting, like high intensity interval training. Again, going back to very high fiber, if your carbohydrates are that way, or resistant starches that have no glycemic impact. Taking exogenous ketones or MCTs I really like C8 MCTs. Those are going to boost ketones in the blood. And then taking glucose disposal agents like the drug metformin, or I prefer berberine, or even more dihydroberberine.
Took mine this morning.
Exactly. So, that's a glucose disposal agent and is going to more readily put you into a state of ketosis. But, the ultimate stack, if you really wanted to crank up ketones, would be to eat like a paleolithic ketogenic diet. That's basically whole food keto, that when you have any carbohydrates, it's very high fiber. And the proteins and fats are going to be high quality, and you won't have the inflammatory omega-6s, the seed oils, and all that. You're going to be doing exercise, especially the high intensity interval training. You're going to be doing intermittent fasting. You're going to maybe take your MCTs, exogenous ketones, and glucose disposal agent. And that would be a way that you can really start stacking some of these ideas to elevate ketones. And that's different than just a ketogenic diet. Metabolic flexibility would come in that you're well adapted to both ketones and glucose for fuel, but give yourself some time again to make the true adaptation on a very clean, focused ketogenic diet for a period of time, because you've spent the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years doing glucogenic, most likely if you're a Westerner. So give yourself, that's why I like at least 90 days to be very focused on a ketogenic diet. Then you can start experimenting with net carbs. You can experiment with cyclical and targeted ketogenic diets. You can get into metabolic flexibility, all those things where you can use either thing as fuel like we used to be adapted for. Like I was saying, more in that maybe Paleolithic time, maybe even more just 100 years ago, before the onset of ultra processed foods and a lack of exercise, and foods being omnipresent, and bliss point foods that override our satiety signals that we're just eating and eating and eating. All these things are now a factor in our lifestyle. So things have changed pretty radically. But one last caveat I'd give is that while metabolic flexibility does mean you're flexible at using either fuel, you're not as truly adapted to ketosis as if you were a strict ketogenic dieter. But that's okay. If you want flexibility, then you want to be somewhere in between where you can easily use either fuel. Typically, someone who's truly super ketogenic is going to be, almost like glucose intolerant. So, that's something to be aware of. You do have less flexibility. And depending on what your lifestyle is, maybe that works, maybe that doesn't work. But metabolic flexibility is definitely, I think, an easier thing to accomplish day in and day out. And as is, like I do, typically like a cyclical and targeted, where I have one day a week where I have whatever I want, typically 2 meals. And the other 6 days I'm eating a ketogenic diet. And then targeted, like when I play like sand volleyball pretty competitively in the heat, then I'll throw in, some carbs, maybe like if I'm playing for 8 hours, like the first 3 hours or so, I have whatever I want. I have gummy bears, I can have Coca-Cola, I can have anything like that. I'm not saying those things are healthy, but if you feel like deprived and you can never have those things, that's the time to have those things. Yeah. And I have it in the form of pure sugar without fat, because I just burn through it while I'm playing and I feel good. I actually look forward to some of those treats and I feel like I've earned them. And, I leave it for only those occasions. Like, if I'm not exercising, then I'm not earning it. So, that's what works for me, is like, I don't feel deprived anymore when I have like that, 1 or 2 meals a week that I can have what I want. If I'm playing very competitive sports, then I can have, something there. And then every now and then, like if I'm going on like a, week or 2 vacation and, I'm traveling in Italy, I'm going to live it up. And that's just what I'm doing. So that's a Metflex week for sure, or so. And I think those things are kind of important. But what's important to that is that you get out of the mindset of all or nothing, that it is about lifestyle, that it is about compliance, that it is about grace on yourself, that it is about finding the beauty in your amazing body and, fueling it in a way that it deserves and treating yourself with the respect that you deserve, however that looks.
100%. And what
Love
comes
it.
to mind with all that you just shared is context.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to follow a ketogenic diet, maybe we don't have to follow a strict ketogenic 75, 85% or 70 to 80% fat, so on and so forth. Maybe someone who's dealing with seizures or cancer or some kind of therapeutic approach, that'd be appropriate. And I got locked into that, I'm not understanding. And so I was like, I know I can't eat too much protein, definitely can't eat carbs at all, or, cheat meals, all this and that. And so context is everything. And that's why I wanted to have you come on, and why I didn't want to just jump into this stuff first. I want to talk about the mindset, the mental, emotional, and like who you are and identity and journey, because all that stuff factors into why one would be interested in keto, why keto would be, it could be this or it could be that, or how they would approach it. And that was something I struggled up until recently with, like giving myself grace of like yesterday. I've been trying to do this, the carnivore approach, just an experiment for some time. And I told Mitch the other day, I was like, I'm getting bored of this shit. Like I love steak, I love burgers and chicken and egg. But I'm just like, I'm bored. Like I love vegetables too. And so yesterday I was like, I'm always like all in or all out. And like, that's okay. And sometimes, but like, I just gotta chill. Like I believe I'm metabolically flexible. I take all the tools. Like we talk about, like, berberine, ketones, MCTs. I fast. I eat pretty much ketogenic, but fuck it. Let's just get, like, my indulgence is always like a slice of pizza from Whole Foods. Like I just love it. It's great. And then, get back on track. I haven't eaten today. What is it? A little after 2 p.m. Eastern time. And, so I think it all comes down to context, and that's why I wanted you to speak to ketogenic diet versus getting into ketosis. They're two vastly different things, but very similar in their own. And then you mentioned stacking. And I love that because people listening may hear all this and be like, what the fuck? I got to cut out alcohol. I got to cut out sugar. I got to cut out when I eat. I got to do interval training. I got to do resistance training. I got to do this. I've never even heard of that. Where do I even get dihydroberberine? Like all these things. And it's like, no. Slow it down. Start one at a time. And then when you get to a point where you feel like you have some, sense of control in terms of what you consume, then the 90-day challenge, if you will, not forever, 90 days. Do this as clear and concise as you can, but make sure you understand why you're doing it and get the information. And that's why I love having you on to talk about these things, because it's not so like daunting as people make it sound. It's not so complex. Just eat real whole food. Just start there. That's a very, very simple step you can start with, and then you can just stack them. James Clear in Atomic Habits talks about habit stacking. Start one and then do another, and then just continue growing. Don't just go all in, because I've tried that. I remember in 2010, I was like, I'm not gonna drink soda anymore. I was drinking a 2-liter Dr. Pepper a day, and January 1st, 2010, I went 4 days, and then I went back to more than I was before. I just had this rebound effect, and so I just want people listening to understand, you just start with one. Just go on. This has been, for you, it's been 20 years. For me, this has been almost 8 years I've been introduced to the ketogenic diet. And it's a process. And I have been learning. And then the ultimate goal for me, not using keto as like I guess therapeutic would still make sense, but not like, I don't have seizures. Like our friend Miles, keto mammoth, because he's 7 foot tall. He knows when his blood sugar gets to a certain point and his ketones drop, he'll trigger a seizure. But he also knows how to combat that. And I think that that's really important, is to understand like who you are, where you're coming from, what is interesting about this to you, and then do it the best you can to get the full experience, as you said, in those adaptations. But back to the beginning of all this, optimize and adapt. You have to understand when it's time to optimize, when it's time to rest, allow the body to adapt, so what you're optimizing can actually work and maintain itself, so that way you can get the best out of it, become metabolically flexible. And I think that's Mark Sisson talks about like his whole thing with primal and paleo. It's like, it's to enjoy your life. Big proponent of fasting, big proponent of ketosis. But he's like, people scoff at me when I have some bread at dinner or I have some sugar in my coffee in the morning. It's like, but I've done the work. And you look at him, you besides his gray hair, you would never know that dude is how old he is. He's ripped. He's in better shape than most people I know, because he walks his talk and he's been doing this for a long time. So I just really appreciate you sharing that, because we're here on the Gray Matters podcast. It's all about context. It's not over here and it's not over here. It's right here. And this is going to look different for either one of us.
Yeah, I did a podcast 2 years ago when I was with BioTrust. No, 3 years ago, I guess now. When keto is like getting super trendy, and I was known as the keto guy, and I called it Death to Keto, and it was meant to be a little seductive and controversial, because what I was saying in there is that the first step is that you remove sugar. The next step is that you eat whole foods, like you're saying. The next step is start getting some kind of intermittent fasting going. And it can just be a 12 and 12, where you have a 12-hour eating window and a 12-hour non-eating window, where you just get control of yourself with snacking. And then lastly, set up an exercise regimen. And it can just be walking, at least at the beginning, especially like a postprandial stroll, where after you eat, you walk. And that's been shown to be very powerful in blood sugar. And so just getting those things going and then adding in keto, because I found that if people don't have their lifestyle anchored in first, then they go on keto and it's a crash diet. They go on keto and it's dirty and it's, lazy keto. And they're having all these keto treats, making keto desserts, eating more calories than ever, overriding satiety. They're not exercising. Their mind isn't in a good place. They're hating their body. They're not detoxed at all. The right habits are not stacked yet for them to be successful on keto. So I definitely agree with that.
Mitch, you got anything to add to that before I move on?
Perfectly said, dude. I mean, that's the same thing we do with our clients. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Excuse me, even introducing the mindset stuff this year. If we don't get rid of the mindset or the baggage from the past, we're gonna sabotage ourselves. We can give someone the perfect plan. Here's how to do keto, but if they don't have the tools to do that, they're gonna sabotage. You're gonna go back to the old self. So creating awareness around what we need to leave behind first in the mindset. I love that, and then baby steps. You laid out just exactly how I do our. We both do our program. Whole foods. Let's start reducing carbohydrates. Let's move a little bit more. Let's have the right mindset, and slowly things are going to come together. And it's going to be much more sustainable than this all or nothing approach that is can be painful and lead to negative health consequences. Versus that's why you mentioned Mark Sisson. I'm a primal health coach, big proponent of Mark, and I was listening to him podcast yesterday. And it's just natural and flowy. There's no big hang-ups. There's no big gotta do this or gotta do this. Just enjoy it and make it your own and get the benefits you're looking for, whatever that is. So yeah.
Love it. And I think Jackie just started vacuuming, but I think we're at a good point where I want to start wrapping up and saving the biohacking section for later, because I see in all of us, I see a lot of layers being shed, a lot of truth coming out, a lot of learning. And although I do want to explore even, the ins and the outs of protein importance and like what quality protein means, not just a brand quality, but like deep down understanding. And then getting into, I know Mitch and I both are interested in like adrenal fatigue and how to overcome that, and plant medicine on a deep level and like all these other things. But I think to wrap up, I feel like we're at a good point, and like I want to get your final thoughts on two things. The first thing I want to ask you is, we went over practical steps. We started deep into the mental emotional piece, and then we kind of got into the nutrition, the fasting, the supplements. We went over steps. You laid out a very simple plan that if anyone's interested in learning more, they can go do that. But like basic concepts, get rid of the sugar, get rid of the alcohol, get your mind right, understand why you're doing it, become more aware, and then get whole food. And then you can add in intermittent fasting, and you can add in MCTs and berberine and all that. And on that note, what are I don't even put a number. What are some of your favorite supplements? We know dihydroberberine is up there. That's why I got it ready, because I double checked with you the other week or so if this was the right one. But what are some supplements that you talked about glucose management supplements and things like that. What are just some supplements that would be in your top arsenal for anyone, any time of the year, any diet they're on, wherever they're coming from? What are just some ones that they can access and apply to their life as just maybe a basic habit stacking form? Like they start out now taking berberine and this and that. They're going to be on the right path, and then they can implement more and more. So what are some of your favorite supplements?
It's all going to revolve around assuming you're getting in the vitamins and minerals that you need. Obviously take like a really good multi that's going to be, I don't know, 2 to 4 capsules at least. The one a day is not going to cover it. You do want to look at a multi that does have coenzymated B vitamins, which means things like 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate for folic acid. It's going to be methylcobalamin for B12. It's going to be P5P for B6. These are the active forms of these vitamins that don't require conversion, where there can be some deficiencies and issues. You also want minerals in their organic salt forms, like things like amino acid chelates. So for like magnesium, for example, like magnesium glycinate, it's going to be a superior form over like oxide or carbonate. So looking for stuff like that in your multi, if it has those things, chances are it's a quality multi. I'll also say, as a supplement, don't buy anything with proprietary blends. Just skip that entirely. If there isn't transparency, then they're not authentic vitamins. They're not living their true self as vitamins or supplements. And I hate it. Honestly, I just hate that practice. It frustrates me so much. There's a practice called fairy dusting that we can maybe get into on the next episode with all the, we can go through all the red flags with how to buy a supplement and all that, but I just wanted to throw that out quickly. So my top list after you have a quality multi would be, number one, the glucose disposal agent, the king, is dihydroberberine. And that outperforms berberine and it outperforms metformin, which is probably the number one anti-aging drug in existence. It upregulates something called AMPK. It lowers blood glucose, improves insulin sensitivity, improves mitochondrial hormesis, reduces inflammation, glycation, and oxidation. It's a miracle compound. It really is the number one thing you should take with anti-aging, period. After that, I would take vitamin D3 along with K2. We're seeing it's not just a vitamin, it is a hormone, and it's tied to almost everything in the body, your immunity, depression, obesity, just literally almost every disease you can think of, almost every tissue you can think of. We used to think of it as just bone health. It is tied into everything. There's a whole endocrine cascade that vitamin D is associated with. So it's massively important. I like to take it with K2 as well. That way you can optimize calcium. Too high levels of calcium without getting the both of those can lead to calcification of arteries and damage over time. Methylation. So I like creatine, betaine, which is also called trimethylglycine. And then the methylated B vitamins that I was talking about, like 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate and methylcobalamin. DHA, high DHA fish oil. Your brain is made up of these key omega-3 fats, this fatty acid. If you want optimal brain health, you want reduced inflammation, cardiovascular health, high DHA fish oil is important. And longevity. I'm not a big fan of just antioxidants in general. Most of the time they don't work. Most of the time they're counterproductive. Depends on timing. What I do like is the polyphenols. They have been amazing caloric restriction mimetics or exercise mimetics or anti-aging compounds or xenohormetics, whatever you want to call it. And they seem to work just in every study, time and time again, whether through food and beverage, like naturally, or taking them as supplements. So I would do both. I would eat very healthy and get a lot of these in your diet, but I would also take a supplement. I really like Dave Asprey has a product called Polyphenomenal with Bulletproof that has a nice blend. Let me see what else. I like gut health, gut-brain axis. About 70 to 80% of immunity is tied to your gut. We see all the neurotransmitters in the gut, if not more so in the gut than the brain. So everything that happens in the brain happens in the gut. You have leaky gut, you also have leaky brain. There's this condition is kind of new, and we're seeing a lot of interest around it. There's also really fascinating research going on with fecal microbiota transplants. We're taking someone else's microbiome, putting it inside your gut, renews your gut and improves your health dramatically. So taking things like prebiotics, these prebiotic fibers, probiotics, I like specifically strains like plantarum, and I like when they're microencapsulated or spore form, so they're protected. Ones that are not microencapsulated or spore form are very vulnerable to heat, light, moisture, etc. Lastly, I like a postbiotic. So that's actually butyrate, the short chain fatty acid, which the gut uses for fuel, which can actually increase beta hydroxybutyrate and other things in the body. So getting the combination of pre, pro, and postbiotics is something that would be called a synbiotic, and that would help renew the gut. I'm thinking, and maybe lastly, alpha GPC. Most people are deficient in choline. This is an optimized form of choline that will pass the blood-brain barrier. Any nootropic stack should be built around a bioavailable choline, because you're running through a lot of acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter, and your brain has a lot of phospholipids that are dependent on choline. So if you're not eating eggs every single day, if you're not taking choline as a supplement, then you're deficient. So taking alpha GPC would be ideal. And I think that's my, top of the mind short list of things I would definitely be taking. Maybe last thing I'll throw in there that's really fascinating to me is adaptogens. Getting back to resilience and being able to keep your stress bucket, your allostatic load optimized, where you can have stuff come into that bucket and your bucket can grow. That's like, eustress versus distress, like a positive stress versus a negative stress. Adaptogens help your body normalize, help your capacity to deal with stress, allow you for a greater allostatic load. So things like ashwagandha and rhodiola, those are probably my two favorite. Lion's mane for the brain. Those are some top ones for adaptogens that I would choose. Lastly, I will mention this one. CBD is, people know it as one of the cannabinoids. It's not THC, it's not psychoactive, it helps with inflammation, blah, 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 blah. If you study the endocannabinoid system, it is one of the most important systems, like the circulatory system, like the nervous system, and it was only discovered about a decade and a half ago. And so we have a very poor understanding of it, but it regulates mood, ability to deal with stress, and so many other things in the body that some people have deficiencies in the ECS, the endocannabinoid system, the in the body cannabinoid system. And that's where CBD and some of these other cannabinoids can be miraculous at filling that gap and helping you lift the depression, helping you lift the inflammation, helping you improve satiety and all these different things in your body. So that would be one to look at. It's highly variable for people though, depending on their ECS. So the dose may be different, the forms may be different, the combinations may be different, but it's something to explore.
I love it. And that's what we can explore a little bit more about all of those on the next episode. And because I did my due diligence, I want to share some that I was surprised you didn't say. And that would be AHCC, L-lysine, and cat's claw.
That's very good. I like the due diligence. Those are good on the immune side of the equation. Absolutely. If you do have any autoimmune issues, or you do have concerns, maybe like you were just at a party and the COVID-19 kind of concerns or whatever, those would be smart to take either proactively or at least after the fact. AHCC is a compound from mushrooms that's really powerful for the immune system. It's probably my favorite one when my body's crashing with Epstein-Barr. Lysine is one that no matter where I'm at, usually if I'm traveling, is fairly easy to access and cheap. AHCC is expensive, and I'd only use it for like a week or 2 weeks as needed here and there, like if your body's crashing. Lysine's cheap and easy to use to keep the immune system up. And then, yeah, cat's claw is an herb that does help with immunity as well. And those are all certainly concerns right now, and makes sense to keep your immune system functioning at peak level.
And then on top of that, would you add zinc into that whole mix as well for immunity?
Zinc is powerful. I would use it like I wouldn't go chronically above 30 milligrams, especially in an optimized form daily. But for short bursts, I could get as high as 75, even 100 for a week or two. If your body's crashing, yes, it can have a powerful effect. Those doses, it can shorten duration of different viruses, including cold and flu. That's been shown. So I'm sure that's the case with COVID, but it hasn't been shown yet as far as I know. But most likely that's the case. So yeah, like using it short term would be ideal, and then going back to prevent deficiency and optimize at something like 30 milligrams. Yeah.
And the caveat with the zinc is copper, huh? They compete for one another.
Yep. You might want to get like a milligram or two of copper in there as well. Yeah, you can, especially if you're using the higher doses, you can deplete copper and then become anemic over time with chronic use. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Mitch was hooking me up on our trip, because I had some zinc, but Mitch had some zinc with copper, and so I was just combining the two. But I'm working with a functional med doctor, like I said before, so it's been a couple days, and we're gonna do some lab work next week. So I'm holding off. I was doing 30 milligrams a day for like 2 weeks, so nothing crazy long term, but just for the lab work's sake, we're gonna take a week off and then check some things out. Okay, so I lied. I have another question. So that was one of two, but I have three. So your book is currently out, right? The Energy Formula. It's on Amazon, and is it in the physical form as well? You're recording the audio right now?
It comes out April 1st.
Oh, it comes out April 1st. Okay, I thought it was out. Okay.
So it's pre-sale right now. I have the book for 99 cents in pre-sale as an ebook. That's about a 90% discount right now. And then I have the hardcover for $39.99. It's full color with tons of diagrams and pictures. That's why it's super expensive. It cost me $39.80. So I'm literally making nothing on it. I just want it to be out in the world, but I want it to be in like the best form possible. And yes, I'm recording the Audible right now, but I have all this stuff. You can get like a hidden chapter on natural movement. You can get a fasting for energy guide. I have all of it on energyformula.com. You can get all the bonuses and the discounted prices. So yeah, go to energyformula.com.
Amazing. And your website is shawnwells.com, correct?
Yeah, ShawnWells. Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to pre-order that. Everyone else do the same. My question for the topic of books, I wanted to make sure we highlighted yours, because that's obviously going to be, I'd say, your answer to this question. But I'm curious of what are your top 3 books that you'd recommend on any aspect of life? Maybe one for each that we've talked about, or just 3 that have maybe transformed your life inside and out that other people could obviously comprehend, because it maybe won't be like a deep dive into the complexity, but just 3 books that come to mind that have transformed your life that you want to share with other people so they can have the same experience.
Definitely, we talked about it. I've mentioned it several times, is Obstacles the Way by Ryan Holiday. I like what that presents in terms of that stoic mindset, that correct approach to a resilient brain. The 4 Agreements is super profound for me. I think we discussed that early on when we were meeting and connecting. That really shifted a lot of things for me internally, and that may have really started, me heading towards that 2019 KetoCon presentation. Especially the don't take anything personally, and people are projecting all the time. And And I realized not only like hurt people and that kind of thing of projecting, but I also granted myself some really great grace when I realized that I'm projecting out when I'm giving people compliments too, and that those compliments are a reflection of me, and that I'm seeing myself in them, and I need to be willing to take those compliments back to myself. And that's something that I typically wasn't doing. I was doling out lots of compliments to people, but I wouldn't be kind to myself. And those are things that, just drop that person's name out and insert your name and see how that feels, like when you give out a compliment. So that was helpful for me. And I would say that the last book, I don't know, I think maybe Boundless by Ben Greenfield, has been a fun one to read. There's a lot of stuff in there. That's a great biohacking resource. It's super exhaustive.
Yeah.
So that's one that I've enjoyed recently, just kind of flipping through, and my approach is very different. This book has a lot of mindset. This book is meant to be more mainstream. It kind of starts out more technical and kind of moves more mindset, because it is energy formula. It goes experiment, nutrition, exercise, routines, growth in your tribe. And so it goes kind of like more, technical with like, biohacking and biochemistry. Then it gets into nutrition with like paleo and keto, and it gets into exercise, high intensity interval training, blood flow restriction, intraset stretching, stuff like that. And then routines with circadian rhythm, morning and nighttime routines, and growth. I always start getting into like fasting and nootropics and mindset. And then lastly, your tribe, and getting into connection and community and blue zones, and then putting it all together is like the last chapter. So it kind of like moves from like, technical to maybe more woo. So but I like its progression, and it works as an acronym for me. So that was fun. But yeah, Energy Formula is certainly a favorite book of mine, of course. It's from my heart, and it's something that I've put out into the world. It's something I've birthed and did a lot of work for, and it has a lot of my story in it, a lot of my research. So I'm certainly super proud to have that out there. I think, at the price it's at, it's extremely accessible. And I wanted it to be like, this was not about making any type of money. It's been just the opposite. I've spent lots and lots and lots of money because I just want people to have this. I don't want there to be any barriers. I want people to heal mentally, physically. I want to change lives, like just above and beyond anything. So I'm very proud of the book, and glad you're giving me a platform to put it out there.
Well, I'm grateful that we could share this time. I'm grateful to have learned about who you are and to have connected. And I'm excited to read your book and to see, what people take away from it and how many people it impacts. Because I think all three of us share the same purpose and intention in life to contribute to the society in our own respected ways and however we can. So yeah, I just want to appreciate you for taking the time to chat with us today, to share all of your wisdom and your knowledge and your perspective, and to let other people know that they're not alone. I think that's what Mitch and I have really found in one another, being so close to each other now. Like, at times we may feel when we're at our lowest that we're alone, that we're broken, that we're weird, or that whatever, but that's not the case. And so there's other people out there that will have our backs, that do have our backs, maybe that we don't see. And I know that your book is going to bring a lot of that light to people. And yeah, I just want to say thank you. And Mitch, you got anything before we wrap up?
Yeah, Shawn, it was great to finally meet you in person and chat with you. Really appreciate you jumping on the call. And I just got to say that two takeaways for me was to start sharing and to be seen more. Especially with what I've been going through this year with this setback with the thyroid after overcoming a lot of health adversity, and feeling that feeling broken and feeling like, who am I to help, that imposter syndrome. So hearing you say that and hearing that someone like you has worked through that and given us some tools on the podcast, I certainly want to find ways to start doing that more. And on top of that, the second thing was not taking the shortcuts and enjoying the journey. Because if you've had Hashimoto's, and I'm sure you understand what I'm going through, and there's some rough days, but there's no shortcut that's gonna give you the answers right away. Enjoying the journey, not keeping your head down, so that you can look around and have that special moment that we talked about with that, maybe that special person in Starbucks or whatever it may be. So yeah, just thanks so much, man. You're a huge inspiration, and it was great talking with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This is a great conversation, and I look forward to knowing you better, Mitch. And anytime you want to give me a call, please call me up. Josh has my contact, so I'd love to be connected with you as well.
Totally, I'll do that, man. I definitely sounds great.
All right.
Well, Shawn, thanks again. Energy Formula coming out soon. You can pre-order on the website, energyformula.com, and the Shawn Wells website. And yeah, again, man, thank you so much. This was the Gray Matters podcast, and I think we accomplished our main intention today to get into the gray area of Shawn Wells and to see the layers being shed. It's really cool to have that experience and for you to share it with all of us. And I'm excited to get on our next episode sometime in the near future and talk about things that may reframe themselves, may reevaluate themselves, and what that really means to us. And so, again, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
All right.